Oh, hey, it kind of looks like it works, except I'm still super sparkly because I have to change the filter in my background. So, and let's make sure everyone can hear me this time. Yeah, I can see myself down there. That's good. You guys say something?
Hello?
Good. All right. All right. That tech wise, I'll take it. Welcome back to Three Drinks Minimum here on the Low Energy Videos channel, where one day I will release a video. Seriously, I have an Indiana Jones video on my desktop ready to go. I just need to make the thumbnail. I got lazy and drunk over the past few days. So, yes, we gotta wait a bit. But welcome everyone to Three Drinks Minimum, the show. How you all doing?
I'm doing fine. In fact, I've had at least 3 drinks, but I've got 3 more to move through.
They said you couldn't hear
I'm
you.
doing
That's
great, and I just
because
started, so.
hell yeah, that's what I want to hear. Landon, can I just say that I hope that this Three Drinks Minimum went better than last one, because if I remember right, I got I was very sick at the time.
Oh, yes, yes. That
Yeah,
was
I
a sad panda day.
that was a very sad
Aw.
panda.
So are we audio live, or are we just
Yeah,
video?
yeah.
Oh, great.
It shouldn't be on my end because I'm seeing you bouncing up and down and Elf bouncing up and down. So yeah, it should be
So,
okay.
so here I have some Macallan uh, single malt 12-year-old Scotch, and for that I have my shot glass is one of the glasses we foraged at the South Pole station, visit if you
Nice.
can visit. And I have some absinthe with some sugar to do the proper absinthe stuff, and I have some grappa from Switzerland.
Uh, and Elf, I believe you're drinking a Stella Rosa.
I am. It's Stella Black. Yep. I don't think I'm gonna get any, like, monetary things for that or anything, but I do drink a lot of
Not a
Stella Rosa,
sponsor,
so.
Tubes.
No, it's not a sponsor. It's not a sponsor. I just drink a lot of their wine because it's really low proof and it kind of just tastes like juice, and they have a lot of really good flavors. They
I'll
have a
take
blueberry one that's like amazing. It's
I,
very smooth.
I'll take that over barefoot any day of the week.
Yeah.
Especially barefoot white, which is kind of like the concept of sour pumped right into your stomach.
Stella Rosa is honestly like, it's not cheap. I won't call it that, but it is definitely, it's a low alcohol wine, and all of their flavors are just honestly excellent. I haven't tried any that I don't like yet. Um, they even
Oh,
have like grapefruit flavor and stuff like that, and those are all good.
So
Landon,
again,
everyone's saying that you're really quiet right now.
okay.
Oh,
This is
I
did you need
raised
to?
you to 200. So
Hmm.
before you start fiddling with it, let's see if that makes a difference.
Okay, so
Yeah, I was gonna
Chat.
say I think it's just on their end because it's normal on this side.
Mm.
so again, just briefly, for the drinks I have a 12-year-old Allen double cask. I've got a grande absinthe with the sugar and the whole process, and I've got a grappa, actually from this one is from Switzerland, but it's the Italian part of Switzerland.
So, as for me, I just pulled my trump card out of the fridge, and I just realized this bottle of Captain Morgan's looks suspiciously different to all the other Captain Morgans I've been drinking over the past few months. It's Spice Gold Original, standard bottle and all that, but the front of it, the label, he looks like the label did in the 90s.
Oh,
It's
maybe they went like a throwback label or something.
maybe. It's
Sometimes,
embossed too, which is odd. Because it says
oh,
paper
weird.
beside. Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway, you were saying?
Oh no, I was just gonna say there companies like to do that sometimes to throw back to their old labels and stuff like that. Like Pepsi and Mountain Dew did it for a while.
True. Volume was low on him last stream too. Yeah, people are saying that you're pretty low there, man. I don't know what to do. I can't, on my end, I've done all I can.
Huh. Is this a Discord thing?
I'm guessing, seeing that that's the medium we're communicating via, if you go in and see if you can raise your own.
Oh my god, I made it.
Hmm.
If only we knew
Yeah.
what he made.
I'll say tech issues abound because I mean earlier I sounded roboty. I have no idea if I sound like that for chat.
No, you sound grand now. That's weird.
That's great.
Mm.
I don't know. Maybe it's just from like setting my headphones down or something.
So just to make a test, is this the mic? I'll tap on it that I'm coming in on. Did you hear that tapping?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear it.
Okay, so that's the mic, and that mic was used on a previous session over Google Chat that was fine, and another one over.
God, I barely got there.
Yeah, another one. I guess it was on Cisco's conference center, and those were just fine with the same settings. And the current Discord setting is set at maximum.
I've got you raised to max. In fact, I've got everyone raised to max. So, like, I don't know what to do about this, chat. Like, Landon's doing everything on his end, and I've done everything I can on my end. So,
At that point, it sounds like it must be a YouTube problem.
Is this? Can you at least hear me, or do we solve a problem, chat?
I can raise the desktop audio up even more, but all I can say to that at this point, guys, is don't complain if it comes in super loud. That's it. Like I've done everything on my end.
So let's just see if the chat says this is good enough.
Okay, you're at full, by the way. You're at complete full decibel. I've done everything on mine.
Hopefully, I'm not clipping.
Oh golly.
Seems fine so far. I don't know.
Well, we won't hear it, but they will. That's the thing.
We'll have to wait to see what the chat says.
Yeah, chat.
Hot.
What does Landon?
Yeah, I feel like if we have everything taken care of on the Discord side, that it must be a YouTube thing. Just something with how we're coming through or something. I don't know.
I can hear you okay, but I have a booster. Gauge is making. I can hear you, but it's unleveled. Lev and Elf are talking much louder. Finally can hear you a bit better. Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, Landon's starting off quiet. I can't balance it out the same way. I don't have a professional rig. I don't even have a second screen. You know? I'll tell you what I've done. I've raised everyone on OBS up to max. Everything on desktop audio up to max. Me, I'm also up on max, so I can lower myself down just a bit for you guys, if that's what you want. There, I'm currently at half thing now. But as for the Discord itself, yeah, other than raising everyone up, that's it. That's all I can do. We aren't even watching stuff yet. What's that going to sound like?
All right. So there's. I'm going to start with the absinthe of my first drink. Use the thing with the sugar and a spoon, and take it from there.
All right. So, sorry if this is not to everyone's taste. I did my best, and Landon did his best. But like, what can we do? Let's now. However, I do believe I made a promise that we have a certain buff of the Corel variety to start our night off with. So that is what we will.
Yes, now he's going to serenade us with Prince.
Since
we listened to him cover Dexy's Midnight Runner.
No. What are the most
honestly? Weirdly, sometimes he actually does well. Sometimes he just actually does okay.
Wet ass pussy, WAP. He fucking nailed that shit.
Surprisingly, yeah, he did actually nail that one. Like he was actually like rhythmically, he was really good. He was right on point.
He made it a little more spoken word than it was like traditionally. There wasn't one too far off that he did that was really good. But there's sometimes this weird overlap where he does too good, so to speak, and without it being like interesting. And that's kind of sad
I
because
I never forget his cover of Fighting Gold from JoJo.
fighting
That just it just
God.
pops into my head all the time, and I'm just like, oh no.
Hey Elf, you know what we have to get him to do?
What?
Cult of Dionysus.
Please don't. I love that song.
There's a day far away.
Oh my gosh. No, no. Okay, so lyrically, I think it'd be more entertaining to get him to do Queen of White Lies. That one's like way funnier. I feel like it'd be harder.
Of course, you also have to consider how does he interpret it via his dancing, you know? Because
Yeah.
he tells a
No, no,
story in every
actually,
one of them. So.
the way that he dances, I feel would go very well with Queen of White Lies. Same artist. It's still a Ryan experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I apologize. I don't have a flame to heat the absinthe spoon to do it properly, but it'll
Hey
work out.
Landon, we're normally okay with drugs on this channel, but please do heroin off the stream, please. We'd very much appreciate it. I'm a dub from the '90s. Okay, Veronica Guerin still has a big name to me.
And
You got that reference. Elf probably is like, I'm sure you mentioned it once.
but I say this is not going to make you run mad in the streets and so forth. That's a myth.
It has the wormwood in it, right? Well, illegally, I suppose you're not. Oh, as well, fuck it. If you're not going to mind saying it, then yeah, it has the wormwood in it.
Yes, and it's a okay. This particular one, and it is actually from Switzerland. Even though it's a product, that thing, the bottle of France, it's not this particular brand. This was a bottle. Some of the best absinthe comes from Switzerland, where you put some money on under a rock and then
Yeah.
back that afternoon, and there's a bottle there. And in fact, most people do that and you don't steal each other's stuff because then you don't get more stuff. Even though it's legal in Switzerland, the best
Yeah, it's
is
moonshine laws over there. Like, it's at this point now a cultural thing. Like, for example, over here in Ireland, if you're ever offered poutine, if it's offered to you in a big jug that's like well made and has the word poutine on it, you're gonna have a 70% proof alcoholic drink for sure. But if somebody then turns around and goes, "Hey, I've got some actual poutine underneath the counter," and they bring out like just a plastic bottle, that's going to be 95% proof, and it's going to just destroy your body. Meanwhile, Elf, you come from the place of Everclear, aren't you?
Calling
Corn.
me out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
corn and corn-based
I
things.
I personally have never had Everclear though, because I'm not into like I'm not
No,
really
there's
into
no
drinking
joy.
like that. Like I like drinking. It's just right. I like drinking stuff that I enjoy, and I don't like feeling like I'm having a drink with Mortarian and it's just like straight chemicals.
so.
Please no.
So the Everclear that I use is for a rare purpose. When I went to Tahiti, in that region, there was a solar eclipse. I bought a half kilo of vanilla bean from a farm, uh, vanilla bean farms. If you know about how much vanilla bean costs, you know what sort of quantity. But those beans are kept in their pristine state because you take a liter jug, fill it about 1/3 full of Everclear because you want high proof alcohol without a flavor, and you stick the beans, the fresh beans in there, they will infuse into that alcohol a wonderful dark vanilla scent that you can take eyedroppers and use for your vanilla flavorings. Plus, you can also then take bits of the bean and use it later
That
on.
is
So those
insane.
beans will last for decades, right?
Like
In
that is so different from the Everclear I had when I was working over in Philadelphia and New Jersey. Like that was
Well,
that was the Everclear that Like she lives nearby where she could pick up. Like it's just pure.
No, no, no. The Everclear is the same. The Everclear serves the purpose of basically making it into like kind of like a vanilla extract. You can use it in like cooking and stuff because
What
it's
was the
alcohol
one
based,
I
but
had
it
that
brings
was
out
just
the
like 90?
well, no, no. So like yeah, no, that's Everclear. But what he's saying is like you can put the vanilla bean in the Everclear and it preserves the vanilla bean and it also like extracts the flavor into the liquid and you can use it for like cooking and stuff and
For
flavorings.
a tincture,
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
and those beans will last. So we actually have several
Mhm.
liters, a bottle, of jars you put in the dark part of the cupboard away from stuff, and every once in a while you go in there and take an eyedropper. So we have a little small bottle of eyedropper we suck out to give us our
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Serves purposes in cooking instead of just making jungle juice.
yeah, it's a to make a tincture of something.
Yeah.
All right. Before we go on, I need to ask, because I've seen a lot of pictures of it. I've obviously never had it because it's very American. It's very ghetto. The hell is lean? Like, what the hell is lean? I've seen all
Lean
I know
is
is purple drunk. What the hell is purple drunk?
lean is codeine cough syrup mixed with Sprite.
That's it.
And you can throw some other crap into it, but that's most of it.
Okay, so that's the one. Like, if you were to be given a styrofoam cup, and they say it's lean. So
It's
what? It's just codeine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Codeine cough syrup mixed with some kind of mixer.
And usually other items as well. It's a thing now in places like Canada where you can get codeine much even in much more readily. They'll mix it with other things as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's something that the problem if you're going to a party and they have something like that is you don't know what other little things they've added to it.
Yeah,
So
in the 90s they
Yeah,
called
like
that a smart drink. Like if you were having
no,
a
yeah,
smart drink at a rave.
yeah, that is the thing, is like the codeine cough syrup and like Sprite and whatever, that's like the base of whatever it is, plus whatever else they decide to throw into it. So yeah.
And one of the other problems that can happen is, for example, if they do a codeine cough syrup, it might have some antihistamines and other things in it, which then if you get a raging headache and you do something dumb like get Tylenol to try to deal with the headache, now you get that the Tylenol overdose stuff and you can destroy your liver and
Yep.
things like that. So
Yeah.
Yep.
It seems
The
like
acetaminophen.
it's like those people who partake in bath salts, like, okay, you really shouldn't maybe do that because that's not what they're for. You've just found a way of getting high, but it's probably gonna kill you in like a single dose.
Everybody come over here.
I want to point out bath salts isn't literal bath salts, it's a street name for another drug.
Oh, come on. How much do
People
I
are
not
not
know?
No, but people aren't just like actually smoking literal bath salts. I
I
just
didn't
wanted to
even know
point that
how they
out.
took it. I thought maybe they injected the damn shit. Like, I am literally out of sync. I have no
I
idea.
too, there are people that go to a bath store, buy bath salts, thinking that they're doing something sneaky. I bet you. I bet you.
Right. Yeah, yeah, because they don't realize that it's legitimately it's a street name for another drug. It's not literal bath salts. I
I
wonder if the
hear
bath salts industry did take like a hit though when that was all occurring. People were like, "Oh no, we can't use regular bath salts
it be
anymore."
damned. Like, you know as well as I do, they would have gone through the roof for like a week. Like, you couldn't find Radox to save your life.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not
And
picturing like
just to
somebody
make
kind of
sure,
a bath bomb like a cocaine and rolling up a 20.
yeah. If you go to so we don't get this thing instantly demonetized. If you go to Wikipedia and look
Monetized.
for bath salts drug, you'll get information about what it really is. That being said, it's not a good idea to go to your local bath bubbly store and get bath salts because you probably don't want to ingest that stuff either.
No.
Yes, please don't improperly use regular bath salts either. They're just supposed to be put into baths for aromatic
Or the
effect.
fancy soaps that look like chocolate. They're not actually chocolate. Don't eat it. Trust
No,
me. I
no,
know.
they're not.
I know this all too well. The ones that look like fudge aren't fudge. They're soaps. They lie to you. They lie in so many ways. But they smell amazing. And they look really tasty. Do not eat the forbidden fruit. And it's just like a block. It's like a block of like lavender smelling chamomile like soap. You just have a big tooth mark in it. Hell, we are in an age when people partook in Tide Pods, so that's actually one of the reasons I thought it was like legit. Like it was legit bath salts because
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
like I look at that
With
then
people
I hear about
ingesting
people...
Tide Pods, I can see that. I can definitely see the confusion.
Dumb people, they're dumb people that will ingest just about anything.
Hell,
Is...
when I was a kid, there was a urban legend going around that if you microwaved a banana peel and smoked it, it would get you high.
Oh my god, that's also in a Whitest Kids You Know sketch.
Probably because it was like inspired.
Probably because it was yes, yeah. The sketch is hilarious though.
Alright, so as promised, here is Buff about to this'll be amazing, I'm sure. Even if it's like mid-tier standard Buff looking crazy, acting crazy, sounding terrible, but dancing amazingly. This will not be my memory of this song, and that is Ben Pye live streaming from Vancouver during Canada Day, rushing around looking for a public toilet. He then found a toilet, and there was 12 of us. This was on Periscope, of all things. And this song was playing in the background while he's embarrassingly staring at us while he's leaning over a toilet, and all you're hearing is just water on water. And purple rain, purple rain. He'll never mention it. But I always remember that because I felt like we bonded as people, as friends. And Ohana means family.
Yes.
Come on, press play.
Yeah, what's poppin'? Your boy Buff Crump, baby, back on the levels. We back in time, friends. Your boy Buff Brewer 122 back on the up, bump, 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 it, bump, 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 it, bump, 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 it, 5, 5, 5, all the way 5, 5, 5, 9 and 5, 9 and 5. Anyway, today we're gonna do Prince, Purple Rain on the ones and twos. I think I've done this joint before. We're gonna do it again on the 1, 5, 8, 9. It's your boy Buff Crump back on the up, dip, pump, pump, pump. Let's get for the dip.
I've always wondered what he's got going on his forehead.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. A mystery.
Buff Corrales growing there. Like I said, guys, if it's loud for you, all I recommend is you're lowering it. Otherwise, you're going to complain that you can't hear Landon or me or Elf or all four. It's just going to be one of those nights. Deal with it.
I mean to cause you in sorrow. I never meant to cause you in pain. Only one time to laughing. I only wanted to see you laughing in the purple rain, purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain.
He's done worse.
I only wanted to see you bathing in the purple rain. I never wanted to be weekend lover. Only want to be some kind of friend. Hey, baby, I can never steal you from another. It's such a shame our friendship had to end. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Come on, see, raise your hand. Purple rain, purple rain.
So, what do you think so far, guys?
Him, and it's interesting. He has the body awareness for his dancing,
Yeah, that'd be great.
and yet his vocal posture makes it difficult for him to sing well, right? And he also
Yeah.
makes the mistake of thinking that singing loud is better, right?
Right.
I think if he had a voice coach, a singing coach, they could help him with his intonation, and also he could listen to himself to self tune.
Mhm.
Two Guns has literally offered him this very position because he was trained
Yeah, I think
classically, and he wants
yeah,
to
I
go.
think he's not I think he's not too far off from actually being pretty good. He just needs a little bit better voice control, and he actually I agree, he probably would do pretty well.
I mean, he's got some things going on with regards to his body, but if he applied that to his vocal and mouth and jaw, that same
Mhm.
sort of skill, and understood the difference between loud and quality, right? I think he could do a lot better.
You know who he kind of reminds me of, but in a musical sense rather than the movie sense? Tommy Wiseau. Tommy Wiseau
Yeah.
believes that, like, if you put nothing but passion in, it will basically make up for all the failings that
That's
come.
the idea behind Tommy Wiseau anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how. It's why he failed at movie school. It's why he got shot down when he basically jumped one of the Weinsteins, I think, at a restaurant, desperate to
Yeah, but
try and get.
he didn't fail utterly though, because his movie is now a cult classic,
For not
and it
the
showed
reasons
in a
that
lot
he
of
wanted
places.
it, though. For not the reason
No,
that he
no, but
wanted
it
it.
is very popular.
It's very popular, and Greg Sestero caught on that real quick. It took Tommy years
Mhm.
to get over it, basically himself. Now he's leaning in on it, and more to power to him.
Mhm.
But Tommy Wiseau, as author as he is, and he is a true author. Like, he has everything. He is in charge of everything, and whether it sinks or swim doesn't fucking matter. It's his baby. He does it his way. It's that not Travolta, Sinatra song, you know? Did it my way. Well, Buff does it his way. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions on it.
It could be a part of his shtick is to do exactly what he's doing, and but people probably there's probably a bunch of people
No.
that sit and watch him to laugh at him.
He's kind of surreal because you know what he's doing isn't the best, and at times it's outrageously bad. But you also know he's cool with it. He's talked on camera a few times, and he says stuff like this helps him get over the stuff he did when he was, like, for example, serving when he was in the military. He didn't have a great time serving in the military. He had a bad childhood. He was drinking too much. He was taking drugs, and he was as he said, he was chasing women. That last one makes me raise an eyebrow and go, "Okay, I'm surprised he's not bringing up the Lord more." But he says this is how he gets over all the bad elements of his life. So this is for his health. But the counter
So
to
more
that,
power to him.
yeah, he just replaced
You make
replace
that
one
every
joke
day.
for another. But the thing is,
But yeah, I mean, but you know, this is a much healthier way to outlet it than ways that he could be.
absolutely.
So yeah, definitely,
But I do
absolutely more power to him.
also think he has something mentally wrong with him because over the years, if you watch some of the early stuff, you can understand what he was saying. Now he famously says when he starts off, and he just kind of mumbles and jumbles and kind of like he gibberishes his way through a conversation until he just belts it out for a few minutes and then ends and then starts up the next one. Like this is his day. He does this for like 6 hours a day. Like it's
I wonder
every day.
if he
I
has a hearing cognition
I
issue,
don't
right?
think he does because he's always listening to the song off screen. So
Well, I don't mean that he's hard of hearing. There are people who don't hear well, or don't hear themselves well.
oh well, that could be true. Yeah.
Like a like an audio processing disorder kind of
Yes,
thing.
yes.
But one thing, like, I just think that he might have even like PTSD or something that's never been addressed. Like, I think there is sadly a very like really dark and sad undertone to Buff, but he expresses it in an
That's
incredibly.
if he's an American veteran, that's quite likely that he has unaddressed PTSD,
I
unfortunately.
knew he was servicing long before I found out for one simple fact. Look at his room; it's always flawless. That is a surefire sign that somebody went to
Also
boot
very
camp.
bare. He does not have extra stuff in his room.
Except for a
There's like
picture of
nothing in there.
himself that's half peeling off the wall and has for years. The man
It's a
has.
great picture of himself, though.
It is,
But
but the more you look at
this,
it, the more it's
this
bizarre.
seems to be his studio. He's got a very specific look
No,
to
that's
his
his
stuff.
room. Like, I don't know exactly where he lives. Sometimes it shows images of him out in a hallway on his Twitter, and sometimes it shows him on this big lounger staring, always shirtless. I've never seen him once with a shirt, ever. It's. I don't.
Part of his thing, he doesn't call himself Buff for nothing.
Oh, no, I can see why. Um, although, no, I take that back. There's a picture of him off screen there to the left. Oh, every picture of him, every picture in his bedroom is of himself. There's one where he's in a like I said, I was wrong about him not wearing a shirt. He was in a army the gray workout outfit that they have that has army printed on the front. He got to take that home with him, and there's a picture of him in a gym smiling with his giant smile. Every shot of him is just glaring at the camera, giving the smile. More power to him that this is the life that he's choosing. But I seriously think that he'd have a more like I think he'd understand himself better if he could just sit down with somebody and we're like, so Buff, tell me about yourself. And within 40 minutes, he's unearthing some probably some pretty horrific things, but things that once he's cleared it, he's like, oh, okay. I guarantee you, it would not stop the music and it would not stop the dancing because he
And
just
I
dwells
agree.
on that.
You said it was Two Guns that offered to do
Yeah,
some,
Two Guns is classically trained, and
and I'd say that
he
sort
does
of
it.
thing. I agree there. But in terms of people having pictures of themselves, there was a politician I knew. I won't mention it because this person is a raving narcissist, who in their city hall they had 755 portraits of themselves in their city hall.
How? How does that even happen? How much
I-
did
That's impressive.
it is,
how much did that cost the city?
and there were
Too
so many
much.
that typically someone went through to all the public accessible spots to count the pictures, and it was like, dude,
That's funny.
at some point.
That's
That's Sacha
wow.
Baron
I
Cohen
have
is a
I have
dictator joke, like
right? I have a self-portrait and it's literally because I was tasked to draw a self-portrait in high school. And I still have it. So that's the only reason.
you know, I've always said that if I ever had to pay money to get a portrait done, I do it in the style of the Dutch classics, the really bleak,
Yes.
heavy oiled ones, where all your details are shown in graphic detail, warts and all.
Yeah.
I'd want to
Yep.
see that.
I'd want it done. I want the portrait. I want the style of the portrait painter that does the really like dynamic ones, where he's got the one where he's just like, and like yeah, I can't remember his name, but he did like a series of really dynamic self portraits. I want mine to be like that.
Modern impression. It's sort of like a modern impressionist kind of thing.
Kind of. He was
colors that are also quite bold and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but he had kind of dark backgrounds, but like he himself was the focus, and he had very like just like interesting poses and stuff, and it was really like fun facial expressions instead of the typical just like blank like sitting portrait face.
The guy, he's got like a black goatee and a black frizzy hair, and he's looking right
And
at the
a walking stick, and he's just like,
yeah.
yes, that's one of them.
I know
Yes,
the guy you're talking about.
there's a whole series of those. They're amazing.
I just want to point out one thing though. I just had a sip of my drink, and I forgot that I'm drinking straight rum, and oh god.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I'm gonna take a good old swig. No.
You weren't ready to be Jack Sparrow.
Where is the rum always gone? I don't know, but it'll take a long while for this rum to be gone. All right, let's get to some
points as someone can search and find the name of that particular politician.
Yeah, if you can read between the lines and like do your sort of like your private detective work, and then you'd be like, wait a minute, Landon knew this politician at this time in this place. Of course, this is the place. It's all in pieces are all in place.
We didn't get along. My politician didn't get along, and I understood when the article was done where someone did the count. This person's response was to get more portraits. So the number might be higher if you do a search for this thing. But this person
Cusco? Did you have a rivalry with Cusco from Emperor's New Groove? It's all about me. All right, let's get.
I only wanted to see you underneath the purple rain. Honey, I know, times have changed. This time we gonna reach out for something new. That means you too. You say you want a leader, but you ain't seem to make up your mind. I think you better close it and let me guide you to the purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. If you know what I'm talking about, sing it, raise your hands. Purple rain, purple rain. I only wanted to see you underneath the purple rain.
Again, he's got some of the enunciation, articulation, intent there. It just he's got some volume control issues and certainly tonal issues.
I'm shocked that he is surrounded by so much glass and hasn't shattered once on stream. Like he belts it. He belts it higher than the last bottom I topped, basically.
This was also thinking if he's in an apartment and someone's next door.
Oh my
yeah.
God, right?
No,
I live
he
in
is.
apartments, and if he was my neighbor, I would be pissed. Like, I would be beating on his front
I've
door,
seen
like,
his
you need to
outside.
shut the
Like, and he does it in the daytime too. Like,
Oh, dude.
I mean,
Well,
don't get me
okay,
wrong. At
to be
nighttime
fair,
could be worse, but
yes, I was gonna say, to be fair, a lot of apartment buildings have some kind of like lease agreement noise clause where you can't make too much noise after a certain
Oh.
period of time, after a certain time of night, and like that's probably why he does it in the middle of the day. So
I
he's not
do.
violating his lease agreement somehow.
I do know one bit of lore about him. He sometimes used to do stuff outside on a balcony that was connected to more balconies, a part of like a wider like network of buildings, and he had to stop because his neighbors were complaining. But they've never complained once about him in his room.
Wonder if it's connected balconies, kind of like the ones outside my apartments.
It's more like I don't know if you've got
You've
the
seen them; they're
reference.
like giant barns.
Sure. I think I lost $5 through one of the little slits there on the wood. Um, but I it felt more like one of those holiday homes in Spain. Whenever we would go on holidays, it always have these like chest high walls, with like little planters in between and with shrubs. That's kind of was like his back garden, and that's I think what's literally outside his window. But like this is his
I
world,
wonder.
and he's
I wonder if he lives in a southern state somewhere, because I feel like that's common apartment architecture in like,
Texas or Cali. I forget which.
right. That's what I was thinking though, is like someplace in like Texas or Cali, like very, very sunny places for some reason tend to have those really high
Well,
balconies.
that's the southwestern like Pueblo Adobe vibe
Yeah.
that they're going for. Hell, do you want a real case of 90s itis?
No, but sure.
Yeah, okay. I control this podcast. I can tangent however I want.
Go on.
Do you remember the show Rugrats?
Of
Yes.
course.
Well, do you remember all the buildings that they all lived in were very they were southwestern inspired. They were all like Mexican
Vaguely.
style, mission style, I think it
Vaguely,
was
yeah,
called.
yeah.
Well,
And
there
I
was
remember them going to a playground and it being very like southwest looking outside.
that was a nice little nod towards how they were new money and all those new areas in the 80s and 90s that were being built out in the desert when like the areas got electrified and watered. But a few doors down from me was a house that was completely renovated after the person retired, and at the time that was the style at the time. So all these standard like Irish English, like if you've ever seen Hot Fuzz or whatever, you'll know what a housing estate looks like. They're not exactly the most unique. And then suddenly a house right out of Rugrats just pops right there, and then it's continue onwards. And I used to always point out and go, Rugrat House, every time we pass by. Anyway, that's it. That's me. That's my southwestern tangent. Go on.
Um, I don't have a Southwest one, but I once went up to Montana and there was a housing development in Montana that had streets named after Harry Potter characters.
Really? Cool.
Yeah. Yep,
Hmm.
it was really interesting.
Here we are. I have I introduced this to you there, Elf, or Landon? Did we watch him last time, or you suck at cooking?
Okay.
Not you, but that's actually the name of the
No, that's just
channel.
the name of the channel. I was gonna say I don't think either of us suck at cooking, but
No, no. I probably suck at cooking compared to the rest. Actually, I definitely do. Like you've learned the hard way, and Landon is probably being trained by chef's table chefs.
I say I don't have like professional training, but I've had lots of training otherwise. But
Years of training.
anyway,
You
yeah.
taught me how to make that pasta with the gourd, like the
Oh yeah, spaghetti squash. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh
It's
yes,
not actually pasta, it's
that's
just
good
squash.
stuff.
Yeah,
That's
it's
good
pretty
stuff.
great.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, I like that.
Mhm.
I have to do that sometime for the end of the year.
Today we're making the LGBTQ+ sandwich, which is a sandwich based on the BLT, but with a little G and Q plus a couple other things added in for good measure. We'll start with the lettuce, which is dealer's choice. You can go with tough and rugged crispy water, also known as iceberg lettuce, because only 10% of it is above water when submerged. You can also go for something like Boston bib lettuce, which is more flimsy and dainty, just like the people of Boston. You can also go with a battle-hardened lettuce like romaine. Whatever you choose, just make sure you put your lettuce on the sandwich parallel to the bread, not perpendicular, or it will be too thick and you'll consume unnecessary oxygen calories. Also make sure your lettuce isn't this wet before you try to slot it onto the sandwich. Guacamole is a dip from Mexico made from guac-avocados. Start by playing a quick game of guacamole. Then we'll cut these up to get the green stuff out. Most people don't want to do this, but if you cut open the pit, you can get more guac-avocado out of there. We'll chop up some onion and some pickled jalapenos because every sandwich needs pickles. We'll mix that together with some lime juice, flavor glitter, and some pepper. And I think too much cilantro will clash with the rest of this sandwich, so I'm going to go real easy and just include around 17 molecules worth of cilantro. Now I'm going to make the bacon, and I'm going to use the best method, which is baking bacon. When you stuff this sandwich in your face, you want to make sure the bacon doesn't tear the whole LGBTQ apart, so baking it ensures easy melt in your mouth bites for everyone. Now we're going to slice up our tomatoes. Much like the lettuce, you can choose any tomatoes you want. According to the internet, some great options are Early Girl, Beefsteak, German Queen, Big Boy, Black Prince, Green Giant, or field tomatoes, which come from a field. And finally, we'll need queso, as in cheese. Could be a slice of queso, could be queso fundido, or queso blanco, or Tex-Mex style queso. Figure out where you want to be on the queso continuum and just go with it. I'm going with a boring piece of straight up queso. Okay, it's spicy Havarti, traditional Danish queso. For sandwich assembly, we'll start by putting our bread into the toaster where it doesn't quite fit, so we'll flip and flop it around until it magically emerges from the vertical hot.
I gotta say, just looking at this, I'm so glad my toaster doesn't work anymore. I don't need it, and I never really wanted it. The moment I realized I could do it in the air fryer, it was over.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm not impressed with this toaster, and I wouldn't. I mean, there are much better toasters.
Oh,
than
far
this
superior toasters out there. Or
Yeah.
even one of those sandwich pressers.
I was gonna say I have a sandwich press, I have an air fryer, and if it honestly came down to it, I would fry it in the skillet before I would put it in the toaster twice like that.
I used to do that when I used to get the. We had in my first apartment, we had a one of the few perks of living in that worst part of Dublin was a bakery called Thunder Roads. Not Thunder Roads, that's someplace else entirely. Thunder's Bakery, and they would sell you a milk pan for €1.40, which then and now is a pretty great deal. So I'd snag up that, and that would be my bread for the week. And toasting it was a nightmare. So pretty quickly I realized, you know what? I either have it just as it is, or if I want toast, I bring out the pan. Because the oven would take forever to cook, and the toaster would always be lopsided. But you know what's the weirdest thing is? Metal Monkey, my roommate, he only ever has his toast in the oven, and it's only ever half cooked. He likes one side nice and soft, the other side crunchy, where he puts the butter on it. It's very specific, and I don't think if he didn't have an oven, he'd get what. I suppose he could do it if he put it on the pan.
That is so specific to know about him.
I know. And here's the thing, that's his only breakfast that I've ever known.
I know some of his life routines anyway, because you've told me things about him over the many years. But
I've been with him as a roommate longer than I've been in any relationship.
yeah. He's been around for a long time.
He's my husband, okay? He is my husband.
I think I actually knew his real name before I knew his screen name.
Oh yeah, but like the thing is, as far as I'm aware, he doesn't state it, so I call him.
No, I wouldn't. No, yeah. I'm just saying.
Yeah, like I actually don't know 100%. I don't think.
Hey there, buddy.
But
still.
Oh, I just
also again, I will criticize that the toast is unevenly, brown, and it's even got some stuff that's been carbonized. So if they did that to toast, I would try to retoast something else because I would consider that a failure.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, if you want to have a toast, probably the easiest thing to do is just throw it into a grill.
Yep.
That way it'll be nice and even. Bit more effort, but I mean, whatever. If you want toast, you're gonna go through that effort, right?
Closet like a monarch butterfly, except instead of flying 3,000 miles a year over several generations while feasting on milkweed and growing 2,700 times its original weight while clapping its fancy wings the whole time, it's more like 2 pieces of toast. We'll take that guac, which will spread out on the bottom. You can also top the sandwich with guac or switch every time you make it. Now we're going to add the bacon. You want to make sure the bacon goes between the guacamole and the lettuce, which we'll add next. Now we'll add our tomatoes. They're sliced thin so you don't get the problem of double tomato thickness, which can cause the sandwich to slide apart. But remember, you must coat your tomatoes with flavor glitter to fully bring out their taste. And this is also a great place to add some pepper. And now
Yeah, that's what he calls salt.
I'm going to add the queso. And now we're back to the bread, but there's one more thing, and it's called mayo. And it's not just because of my genetics. I mean, obviously, I'm a 1/4 French person, so I'm naturally predisposed to enjoying mayo since it's part of my heritage. But there's just a symbiosis between bacon, tomato, and mayo that cannot be ignored. This is not the time to deny.
Mayo, to me, is what, like a lot of people get indifferent about pickles because they expect it. To me, it's reverse. Like, I don't want pickles all that much. What I want is I'm indifferent to mayo. It's just kind of there. But I will lose my shit if there's pickle stuff involved because I'm not a big fan of pickles. But I'm also not against the concept in certain circumstances. Other people.
Man loves mayonnaise.
A relish can be useful in certain things, but pixels are not necessarily as good as, for example, something like beetroot, right? That's something I learned in Australia is they put on beetroot or pickled beet slices. You have kind of the tomato size stuff and texture, but it has a much better thing. Almost, you can get all one that get a crunch, so forth. But that's kind of a common thing on a fish burger or a hamburger in Australia is beetroot rather than pickles.
Beetroot on a fish on a fish sandwich or a fish burger. Ooh, I don't know if I'd be on board with that.
I'd probably try it.
I'd try it, but
well, think about the fish and chips thing where you have kind of a malted stuff on it. It's that side of flavor profile.
Yeah.
Yourself that pleasure. And there we have the LGBTQ sandwich plus BPSM. Now it's time to get a grip and ram this LGBTQ plus down everybody's throat who you love and who also enjoys sandwiches made with these ingredients who are also expecting you to do that. So it's not a total surprise, but more like a welcome thing because they're hungry and maybe because they said, why don't you go in the kitchen and make me a sandwich as a joke, but you went into the kitchen and made them a sandwich as a counter joke, but then maybe you ate it in front of them as a reverse counter joke and now they regret it because you're going, this sandwich tastes so good, and they actually believe you because it's true.
What?
Okay.
Great. I think that one kind of failed a bit.
I feel like that was just recounting real events.
Yeah, I think he stopped. Like remembering that he was like recording and just started to go off into
Don't ever believe
Man, French tacos just look like a ranza.
And again, I'm critical of the fact that it seems like
he's on the platform.
he dried out that sandwich in the process of trying to toast it in a toaster that was not appropriate for the second
Right.
bread.
That bread was really crispy when he dropped it on that cutting board. It hit the cutting board hard.
Yeah.
I think like all the butter in the world wouldn't really save that because.
No, I feel like that would like hurt my teeth to eat.
So I would guess that the word you suck at cooking applies to the person or the channel, or is that just a nitpicky
No,
joke?
that is the name of his channel. He kind of like he makes okay to very okay to passable food. I mean, there's the French onion soup right there is the one that he made, and oh yeah, fuck it, we'll watch
French
it.
onion soup, also known as Frenion soup,
But he just makes it into a joke, you know, like he plays it up as a laugh, but then the food he makes actually turns out to be okay-ish at times.
is a
I mean,
soup
this looks
from
like
France
French
where the
onion soup.
main delicious ingredient is cheese. We're going to start by chopping up an off-putting amount of onions. You want to cut them around 1/4 of an inch thick. If you're in France using the metric system, you'd cut it at 0.0000635 kilometers thick. Keep your cell phone nearby so
We are light years ahead of you people.
if one of your buddies walks into the
Sorry.
kitchen and sees you
I'm operating metric, by the way.
crying, you can grab it and
So
say,
you'll see
I'll
in
do
my
anything.
house, all thermostats show Celsius. Some of them show Kelvin. I do millibars. I do my measurements
What?
are.
No love for Zoots anywhere or Zorts. What was the joke one that Google made? It was like Zorts or Zoots.
I will say as another condemnation of the political disease known as Toryism, that you have upper class pseudo twits like Rees-Mogg, who thinks that bringing back the imperial system in the British Isles will be a great, glorious something or something or other. It'll further make it even less likely that anyone would want British goods because they will either have to do double measurements, like these stupid things in the US, or they just won't get over to places in the EU. But leave it up to the Tories to do something as stupid as bringing back imperial measures.
Tories doing something based off a fictitious idea of the past? Heaven to Murgatroyd, I've never heard such a thing.
If you just take me back. That way they won't think the compounds in the onions are causing your lacrimal glands to become irritated like a weakling. You'll need around 2 pounds of onions, which is this much.
Never happened to me, by the way. I've cut enough onions now. I've never cried. I've never seen the joke. I've never. Now pepper does make me sneeze.
Lucky
so
you.
That's. I don't know. It never triggered me.
No, I mean onions. Lucky you.
It does depend upon the type of onion, and it depends on the
You
fresh.
just wash it 1st.
Mhm.
That's the main thing. But even when I do it like completely raw, like I'm like.
It helps if you soak them in cold water.
Mm.
Onion for scale. Now don't throw out that perfectly good onion paper. Instead, whip up a bath of paper mache paste and make a beautiful onion skin bowl. I also went back.
That looks like something that would fall off Jared.
Made the cooked transparent version of the paste, and I have to say, this one's also going in the garbage. Now we're going to caramelize the onions, which is a long, slow, painful, necessary process of turning the onions into worms. We'll start by adding butter to the pot. In France, you're legally obligated to use at least 2 tablespoons of butter anytime you turn on an appliance. We'll also add a tablespoon of olive oil for fat diversity. Our heat is on medium-low, and we're going to be careful not to crowd.
Do you do high flavored olive oil or low flavored olive oil? Right. That's I would think
that looked pretty like watery as he was pouring it out.
Christ.
Yeah, but if you
I'd say
had
low.
version olive oil, you get too olivey of a taste, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like you'd want it to be lower because you wouldn't. Yeah, you wouldn't want it to taste too olivey.
But you are burning it away, though. That's the thing.
But you're also cooking a bunch of it into the onions.
That's
Yes.
true. It's infusing with it, so yeah.
Our pot with
Now, I
too
think
many
you might
onions.
also do with that many onions is I might go for a wok, but not at wok temperatures, as a
Yeah, a
better
wok
way.
would be great because then you can move it around more and get it more. Yeah.
So they don't steam, which will cause it to take way longer to cook. But this is the pot I have, so I'm going to crowd the onions and we're just going to see what happens. Pro tip, you can use 2 pots. We're going to let these cook covered and wang jangle them every 5 or 6 minutes. This very slow process is how you draw out that delicious caramel flavor, along with this half teaspoon of sugar, which will wang jangle in. Time and patience is how you end up with one of the most iconic French foods.
Et moi?
Oh, you're iconic too, croissant. Et moi? Oh yeah, you're iconic too, baguette. Oh yeah, you're iconic too, croque monsieur. Now we're going to separate a couple tablespoons of thyme leaves. One thing you can do is hold the top of the thyme branch and strip downward to get the leaves off. This doesn't work if you go in the other direction. If there's some flimsy bits in there, that's okay. Just keep your flimsy bits out of it for once. Another thing you can do is feed it through a small hole and then pull it through. But one thing you want to avoid is saying something like, wow, this soup sure does take a lot of time, if you're not mentally and physically prepared to be a father. Meanwhile, things are just humming along at the old onion reduction facility.
When your cooking joke infuses over into your dad joke.
Facility here. Although that's a pretty vigorous bubbling, so I'm going to turn that down even more, and that's a lot of liquid, so I'm leaving the top off a lot. We'll also get preparing the Gruyere in by dismantling it into shred shapes, and we're getting into some real onion color acceleration now. That's progress, people. Now we're going to forage for some old crusty bread. The crustier the better. This is perfect. Now we'll further crustify it by slicing it up and throwing it on a pan, then into the undo at gundos on broil for a couple minutes, then a little flipsy doodle and back in, then our crust circles are complete.
You don't need
the onions
to use
are
stale bread. You can do that process of baking good bread, because if it's not bread you'd want to eat, why would you want to put it into a soup? So like saying, people have cooking wine, right? Say, well, that's good for cooking wine. If it's not wine you would want to drink, don't cook
It's why in Italian, like, forget restaurants, but in homes, if they're cooking with the wine, they're also pouring themselves a glass.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like, I always love that scene from The Godfather where the whole movie just stops as one of them just describes how to make this very simple meat sauce for like sausages and things, and he's just taking the occasional swig from the bottle, and then he just pours it, he drizzles it on top, and then he throws in the onions and the garlic and the pepper and all that. It's the most simplistic thing in the world, and it smells lovely and it tastes fine. But above all else, you're getting drunk while you're doing it.
So it is that criticism is take bread fresh bread you'd want to eat, and bake it to become and that's going to be. Okay, you don't have to turn it into a hard bread either, because you're going to go into a soup that's going to consume the juices.
Yeah.
So lightly toasting good bread you want to eat, putting in this soup will give you a better.
He probably already had some decent crusty loaf, like a baguette or something, and he was like, let's cut it up anyway. But yeah, he could have taken anything and.
Usually cooked until they're very dark, but some chefs say the deep flavors develop long before the darkness. I say I'm hungry and these are turning into mush, so here comes the vermouth. You can also use sherry or wine or even some kinds of vinegar. This helps deglaze but also saves time since you're eating soup while having a drink simultaneously.
I would do a combination of a sherry and maybe a little bit of balsamic, balsamic.
I wouldn't have thought to add that. I could get that really easily. What about a port? You can get port around here a lot. You think that would work well?
Well, the one thing I would worry about is making it too sweet.
And a port probably would be a little bit.
Yeah. So there are balsamics. That's why you'd want to be light on the balsamic, or have a balsamic that's more umami flavored than like, let's say, a cherry balsamic type of thing. So yeah, I would say that, but a good sherry, not cooking sherry you'd want to drink, plus a little touch of a savory balsamic would do your soup some good.
Recipe calls for your onion chopping tiers as the broth. We're going to go ahead and use beef broth for this one and just pour that in. And now we'll add in that thyme and salt and pepper to taste.
By the way,
and
a
now
good
you
vegetable
just
broth
cook it until it
is a thing to consider. The reason for that is that sometimes the beef and the beef fats get in the way of the cheese, and so and vegetable broth is really easy to make. All those butt ends of the vegetables you've been chopping, you sort of put into a bag, keep in the refrigerator, and at some point when you have enough, you go and you basically slow simmer in a large pot the vegetables overnight. You're doing a slow cooking where it's not really boiling, but it's near boiling to sort of mildly boiling. And then at the end, you essentially put it through just a mild strainer to strain out most of the head veggie bits, take a broth and use that as your veggie cooking. So you're basically when you have like that onion where you're carving off all the edges of it, those go into your stuff. You have your broccoli, you're having the hard stump. There's still flavor there. Put it into your vegetable broth.
Over here, we don't really do that. Rather, any leftover vegetable matter or anything goes into the compost because everyone I know grows. Whatever they're growing, it always needs compost. So,
composting does stuff, but that's also how you get your vegetable stock as well.
Yeah, no, it's just that like no one gets the opportunity to do that because everyone takes all that extra stuff and just turns it into mulch. Which, great, at least someone's getting use out of it, right? But you don't get the opportunity to continue using it for food. Rather, you're growing your next batch of food.
Tastes amazing. Maybe 40
Nothing wrong
minutes,
with it,
maybe
but
just
yeah.
taste it. To trace the origin of French onion soup, we must first look back to the days of the French raw onion sandwich. During the bread shortage of 1726, water was added to make the sandwich taste more full. One night, Alexandre Toussaint left his watery onion sandwich on the radiator and fell asleep for the night. When he awoke, much to his astonishment, his wife let him know she was divorcing him for leaving his sandwiches all around the apartment. In that same century, French onion soup became popular in cafes around Paris. Now we'll spoon that soup into the special bowls with the built-in handle that are about to collect dust for years because you'll never make this again. Put in some floating crust discs, drown that with shredded Gruyere, then back into broil for a couple minutes until that cheese
know
is
it costs
boiling.
40,
And there we
but
have our
I
delicious
use it
French
all the
onion
time.
soup. I crowded the pot, the onions fell apart, they didn't get dark enough. It still tastes incredible, for real. But I encourage any
It
friend...
looks really nice.
Okay, so a couple of things that in addition to that I think he made a mistake on. You don't want your bread chunks to be large. I would have those bread chunks maybe half that size to a third of that size. Second thing is that the cheese bits that come over the edge, that is a critical part of making proper French onion soup. That comes from, so one of the things you wanted to do was to preheat the bowl to be piping hot. So you're pouring soup into an almost scalding hot bowl that's been broiled. And you put with basically sort of crouton-sized chunks of bread, and you have enough cheese that the cheese will melt over the edge because those melted strips that are slightly brown, and his is not slightly brown, so he didn't actually have it at a high enough temperature. Those cheese bits are actually some of the best parts of the French onion soup. The stuff that's hanging over the side, but it's sloppy cooking.
And you want to add here, Elf, before we move on?
No, I pretty much agree with all of that, actually. Yeah, I would use crouton-sized bits of bread instead, too. And the cheese bits are important, but definitely he didn't get them dark enough.
Yeah.
Everyone in the chat, if you're enjoying yourselves, I don't think I shilled. You guys should by now know what to do. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Check out the links down below. Tomorrow I will come back and edit in. Landon has quite a few people he wishes to shill, so I will come back in tomorrow and drop them under his name. And if you want to help out financially, we have ourselves a stream goal, and given greatly appreciated. Ooh.
And could you click
I
the like button,
apologize.
folks?
Oh yeah, do that, definitely. Click the like button.
Like, share, and subscribe. Yes, Elf, you were saying?
I may have to go soon, actually. I'm sorry.
All right.
It's getting a bit late for me as well. I know it's not nearly as late as it is for you, but it is it's getting quite late for me as well, and yeah.
Yeah, we can go like another hour, but at 4 o'clock in the morning, I think it's a good time to wrap it up. So Landon and I can hold down the fort for another hour or so. But Elf,
All right,
Well,
Elf
I mean,
has been
but it kind of depends
fantastic.
upon there. If you want to call it a night
Oh
now,
no, I'm still actually good for a while. We want to be streaming for about an hour or so. But I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
go.
This one hasn't been going very long, but I will have to get
Yeah.
going. So, gentlemen, it was
thank
nice
you very
talking
much.
to you.
See you when I see you.
Have a good one.
Bye. All right. I'm just gonna reorganize you now. And then there was 2, but not for all that long. So you guys don't forget, like I said, to be checking out descriptions, helping us out stream wise, and there he is. There's the king of the castle himself. I don't know why I channeled Charlton Heston there real quick, but there you have it. Right. So I was thinking for the next thing to watch. I'm actually spoiled for choice. I've got a big list right here. Oh, here's actually something that Raisin, if she's in the chat, she'll appreciate this. I did not know this, but you can simply order a street tree online.
There were no trees on my girlfriend's street in Philadelphia, so we recently requested a free native street tree from the city through Pennsylvania Horticultural Society's Tree Tenders program. A city arborist first came out to see if there was enough space for the tree and to check for underground utilities. Luckily, we were cleared, and the arborist marked the sidewalk for where the new tree pit will be. A few weeks later, contractors came out to cut and remove the sidewalk. They also replaced the low-quality soil with high-quality topsoil, as seen here. And a couple weeks after that, our tree came. It's an Allegheny serviceberry, a small native flowering tree with yummy edible berries. The local tree tenders volunteers came to help plant it too. Because the tree pit was on the smaller side, we knew that there wasn't much space for a large maturing tree like an oak, so we requested a small maturing native tree. This way, even when the tree reaches its maximum size, it will not run out of root space or lift up the sidewalk. If you're in Philadelphia and you want to request up to 3 free street trees, I put a link on my link tree in my profile with instructions on how to do so. Next, we're going to plant some native herbaceous wildflowers in the tree pit to help spruce things up a little bit. Native urban trees are so beneficial for many reasons, so let's try and green up Philly a little bit. There were no trees on my girlfriend's street in Philadelphia, so we recently requested a free native street tree.
Cool. I didn't know you could just I thought it was a given when your neighborhood was built that they put plots aside on the sidewalk solely to grow the trees. I didn't know you could just I think we should get a tree, and they're like, yeah, you should get a tree. I did not know that was an angle.
That street had trees, but the neglected died and was paved over. And
that's possible.
But you know,
yeah, that's a cool little feature. Although I do wonder, like, it had to have been a government approved agency, right? You can't just go and rip up a pavement and not have the city get involved.
It was the city arborist found a section and they did the cutting. You know, the other thing they probably also looked at was to make sure that the tree wouldn't block the access.
Yeah, they said that they went around to make sure that there was no maintenance, that they wouldn't get in the way, that it wouldn't be massive. Like an oak on that pavement would be a terrible idea because there wouldn't be a pavement. By the time it was fully grown, it would just be it would be crushing into into the buildings. A lot of the trees around where I grew up on my in my housing estate were these big giant leaf things. Lovely, but there was a blight that went around, and a lot of them got sick. So the county council just put them all down and replaced them with these lean things that are only now really starting to come into their own. But I don't know, it was kind of sad watching them all go down because I remember climbing them when I was like 5 or 6. I can't tell what they were. I know they had berries that you couldn't eat. They weren't poisonous, but they just didn't taste very good. And we were more likely to throw. I think we did have one chestnut tree on our road. And that was cool because I'm old enough to remember roasting chestnuts to use them as conkers.
Mm-hmm.
which is a dying art now in the UK and Ireland. Very few kids do that anymore. Which is, again, that's kind of sad. I liked doing that as a kid. I was terrible at it. I could never swing them right, but they were nice. They were nice to cook with. Anyway, Boop, boop. Exploding bath toys.
This is safe. Now I know it may look like I've been, well, blown up, but this is not your ordinary explosion, because this was created by sodium metal. It is highly reactive to water and oxygen in the air. In water, it loses electrons so fast that the positive electrostatic repulsive charge rips itself apart, leading to the sodium embedding itself into the water with tiny little spikes as it explodes, leading to an even faster reaction until you get the fireball. This is called a Coulomb explosion, which, because there is no solid shrapnel, I am fine wearing this face mask. But I want to make a whole rubber ducky out of sodium, so I decided to make this ridiculous apparatus that can produce sodium metal. And after 5 months of building it and collecting enough sodium, this was my first test before the sodium duck, which was done safely. This is what sodium metal does when it touches water. Are you okay? Don't worry, everything was fine. Yeah. Sodium is just really loud, bright, and smoky. But still don't try this.
Don't try this. This is exactly how you try it in graphic detail. Let me show you the links in the description below to buy all these things at a low price. Use promo code Don't Try This for a 10% discount. That's fascinating, but why?
I mean,
Also,
one of the things as well that's a problem with stuff is that sometimes what happens is you get secondary explosions where the sodium does not all consumed by the reaction, but breaks apart and people's pieces fly up, come down, and then re-explode.
So it kind of like becomes like a follow-up mini explosion after.
Yeah, and the thing you don't want to do is to get them under that shield. Now he's got glasses on as well as there, but again, some of those hot things can basically launch up into. Also, there are reactions with the sodium. Sodium salts where you probably don't want to be swimming in that in too high a concentration.
I'm just thinking, like, he did this for about half a year just for that one-off. What if, for example, he had gotten it wrong and he flung it down into the water and nothing happened? Like, well, by half a year of work, this seems like such a limit, especially because he didn't even get that much in the way of views out of it. He got like, oh wait, I take that back. I was looking at his comments. He has 1.3 million views from this, so I guess that's worth it.
But again, it's hard to see if there was, because he does the explosion and stops it, whether there was secondary explosion. But also the thing is that in your bathroom, there are bits of sodium that are flying out of the tub, sitting on that might be sitting on the floor. Not a good thing to step on.
Oh no, this is interesting. Somebody hijacked one of the giant ads there in Times Square to play a free-to-play Garfield game on the giant billboard. Like, how the hell did they actually like pull this off? Shouldn't there be like more security over this thing?
So now I don't know if they basically uploaded a video clip of the game, or because I saw it cycling through other.
Yeah, it gets like it's switched over. So I guess the person in charge of putting the ads up did a sort of like Fight Club thing where they slipped in something in between the frames, so to speak. But I don't know, like I thought there would be way more like oversight with this, seeing that it's kind of it's the mecca of advertisement as a rule. Like you
And
think
it's possible that they had a clip that they replaced, or it's some simple algorithm of whatever clips are in a directory, it goes and cycles through, and they managed to get it installed in the directory. Who knows?
everyone talking about the Eggman announcement? What's this? Another one? Okay, I'm not seeing anything different. Yeah, I'm not seeing just the ads. Like I was there in January in New York, and like these things are just like I thought that like, they would go through the worst like levels of like scrutiny, make sure that everything is fine. Because what's stopping somebody from just like showing porn on them? You know?
I mean, I can imagine that the monetization of those screens is very important, and there probably are very strict contracts in terms of how many views you have for how much someone pays.
Hmm.
But
I mean, do you remember when Pornhub had very briefly an advertisement up there from a few years ago? People lost their mind. All it was just a Pornhub logo, nothing else. It was just PT. Now these days, if you've seen like the PT opening, like the Pornhub logo, you know what it's spoofing, even if it's nothing to do with Pornhub. It's just a given now. It's like when you see the Playboy bunny, like you know what that is. You don't need anything else as a reference. But like they lost their minds over it because that implies, well, it's not even implying, it is selling pornography, but there's nothing wrong about it. It's on screen just the words Pornhub or just PT. It and people lost their mind. But what I think before the end of the decade, we'll have one case of just some hardcore pornography being played on those things, or something truly weird like Max Headroom esque, where someone hijacks it and like just controls New York for I don't know 5 minutes. The world is not what you think it is, with all this weird trippy stuff.
those screens are not necessarily high resolution, high fidelity, and I think it's just a matter of showing, something equivalent of an animated GIF or animated PNG.
Oh yeah, no. I'm sure once you get down to like the actual like the base of it is the same as when you want to upload something to your phone or your smart TV. I think they are just glorified smart TVs, just on a very particular network. But someone has to operate them.
Some directory that has the things in there, but I imagine the sophistication is on somebody pays for 500 views on prime time over a period of 3 weeks, and so they shuffle them in and out because essentially they're renting the
There
space
was
for a couple.
a YouTuber on them a few. I don't think it was PewDiePie. It might have been PewDiePie, but a YouTuber was on them a while back, and they briefly talked about how that works. They have to go through a advertising agency, of course, because of course they're all that is rented space.
Yes.
And they go through the I think a holding company that goes through the advertising company that then sets the terms. So there's a lot of like you need a good legal team just to be able to sit down and talk terms with this. This is top tier, like millions, billions of worth. But in exchange, you get to have your ad in Times Square. You get to be able to have the clout of that, and that to some people is worth any price. So that's why I'm just shocked that somebody could just casually upload something completely as harmless as a Garfield timing game that looks cheap as hell without even any audio. But next time, You know, it could be child porn. It could be a senator's personal information. It could be, it could just be, I don't know, girl just flashing her boobs on camera repeatedly over and over again. Could be anything. And
It's
while I'm kind of
the
for it in
compromise,
context.
but the compromise could have been done through the person that manages the queue. So imagine, someone's got some laptop and they're the person in charge of loading in the ads that have been contract approved.
Yeah.
And that laptop is compromised and injects another file into that service directory, right, where the thing goes. I would think the way you would try to manage it is that those images would be digitally signed, and there is a metadata that talks about how long the image plays and how often before it's kicked out of the queue. Let's say because someone maybe pays for 500 impressions at a certain time, so there'll be all those sort of contract rules that they would get involved with, and that's how you get better regulate it. But still, the servers probably also have something where if they have no advertising to put in there, do something else, right? There's probably just what to do if they don't have paid advertising.
If they don't, they usually show like the weather or accurate weather will pop up, or maybe give you like a brief news update. Which Times Square has been doing that since World War II. You know, the little ticker thing would just show up around the bottom.
And it's also possible that somebody would pay for saying, if you have dead air time, put up my ad. That's those you could do.
Hell, if I remember right, one time I was in Times Square, it has an access to EarthCam, and it'll just zoom on a particular person. So you'll be walking down the street, and then you look up and you see that you're on the big billboard right there in Times Square, and you're like, yeah, and the tourists love that, and locals hate that, and everyone in between is everyone in between. If anyone's watching right now who hasn't gone to New York, go to Times Square at night. It is one of the most surreal things you'll ever experience. It is so pretty and so scary in equal measure. Even if it's like a really like quiet, dead night, there are more people currently walking around Times Square than there is in the entire village I'm currently in right now. Like we've got less than 600 people living here, and probably that's a pretty old estimate, and this village has only gotten smaller. So there's a good chance that like Times Square has maybe even double our population right now. But I mean, like it's a great time. Don't go there in New Year's. Like New Year's looks cool. Go to a bar in New York and count it down. That's a wild night. Don't go to Times Square, because for starters, you won't get anywhere near it. It'll be packed for up to a day in advance. And where are you going to go and pee? Are you going to freeze to death because it's bloody cold in New York in December? Are you smart enough to bring a jacket? To bring food? If you move, you're not getting back to that location, so you got to stay put. I go to a sports bar or something around about 9 or whatever in Manhattan as well, because that's when you also get the tourists and the locals in equal measure, and have a great night.
It's just too crowded to be able to be enjoyable. Yeah. So my practice is to sit in front of my atomic clock and watch the UTC New Year's tick off. That way, then it's
Did you ever?
Since I'm 8 hours behind UTC, it's in the afternoon, and then you can go and watch other events over the internet.
Did you ever celebrate New Year's on the Dateline? If I'm gonna ever ask that to anyone, like, did you ever go to like the South Seas or whatever and just like count down the day and then cross over the horizon? I've known one person who was on a ship, and they kind of like went over from A to B as it was happening, but Did you ever do anything like that?
At the South Pole, there's a ceremony where the pole is identified at that moment. The location because the pole wanders about 10.2, 10.3 meters a year. So it's reestablished. The people from the previous winter have designed a marker, and so the marker gets revealed and put into place at the time. So at the pole, all the time zones come to some spot. So there's always a
So you did actually something even rarer than cross the date line on New Year's. You kind of like were there when the pole was reset.
yeah, for that spot. I normally go there a couple of days after New Year's, but I was there on one of the times. I was not part of the whole thing; just happened to arrive
Oh,
around that time to then go walk over there to watch the
oh,
relocation.
okay. The closest I've ever gotten there, I've never been, but my uncle served in the Falklands, and he described getting down to fighting Stanley, and he went back once in the late '90s for a reunion. He never went back any further south than Mexico after that. Um, but how? Let's just say you're in London. How would you, as an average person, get to the South Pole?
Probably the easiest way to do would be to contact ALE, Antarctic Logistics Enterprises, that does supply missions to various polar bases, and they tend to operate through South America, flying in down the Antarctic Peninsula into a place like Union Glacier, so 80 degrees south, and then operate things like DC-3 Twin Otters to then fly to other bases inside Antarctica. So there's the getting in and out of from a continent, non-Atlantic continent to Antarctica, and ALE does that stuff because you want them to bring on all your food, medicine, that sort of thing, service stuff. So you go with that group, and then when you're there, there are then ways to transport people to other bases. Ogden Scott is one of those spots there. They also operate a camp that's about 3/4 of a kilometer from the pole, that you can stay at. It's pretty pricey. It costs quite a bit, but
Geography Now recently did a thing on America, and they mentioned the two big American bases, or rather the big American base. Well, it's not an American base, but it's they operate the research station there in the South Pole, and then they have like the one you mentioned right by the South Pole.
yeah,
I
the new Ogden Scott. I mean, the third polar station there is within about, I would say, maybe 150, 200 meters of the pole. So it's an easy walk there. They also have a little sort of visitor bathroom, warm room nearby spot. They also have the ceremonial pole. So you get the ceremonial pole, the candy stripe pole with a nice ball on it.
Yeah.
It was where the South Pole was when the first permanent pole station was established. After Odmundson went there in 1911 and Scott January 1912, no one arrived on the ground at the South Pole, although a bird flew over the general area, until 1957, and that was when the first permanent station was established. They've had that station didn't last very long. They built a dome. The dome was kind of a bad idea. Sorry, Bucksman Fuller, but it was a bad idea, and it kind of continued to sink into the ice, and so they built the modern station that's there, which is, again, it was quite an expensive endeavor. The cost per square meter of that pole station was more expensive than the space station to manage and to build.
So, would there be more planes or ships arriving to the South Pole on regular each year?
Well, there's no ships that can get into the South Pole.
There's no like bay that they could make it to.
It's high. It's up.
Yeah, I've
relatively high
I've seen
on the plateau.
the cliffs and stuff like that. It
Well,
looks...
no, but I mean, the location itself is around
No, I mean
3,000.
Antarctica as the continent, like
Oh,
near
yeah,
the
because
bases, on the coast there.
once you get, you first get the pack ice, icebergs, pack ice, and then you get to what they call the coast. And the coast, the continent is defined as either rock, and about 3% of Antarctica is above ice, or it's ice perfectly on top of rock, or it's ice shelf attached to ice that's on. There's how they define the boundary, because it's kind of, if you look from space, the size of Antarctica kind of grows and shrinks depending on how much ice is there. But the continent divide is, the coastline is defined as rock or ice that's on rock or ice attached to ice.
So that's where the research stations are built, right?
And most of the research stations are actually on the peninsula, because that's actually the most northern part of the thing where the weather is not so bad. Also, many of the stations are on the coast, because the coast, the temperatures are not that bad. I mean, you're near ocean water, so
Yeah, so obviously it'll
so
be much more manageable.
So a lot of people that go to Antarctica, quote unquote, go to Antarctica, are going on a ship on water, and while you can get cold winds coming off the continent, you're in the sort of freezing temperature range. Once you get beyond the coastline, you typically start to climb up onto the plateau. That's when you leave all wildlife behind. The penguins you're only going to find in certain coastal areas, because they're an aquatic bird. They're a bird that lives in the water, and they can't get the water.
Aren't the only living things besides humans then at that point, like the occasional, is it the albatross that sometimes flies over there?
Can't get into the interior as well. There's not really anything for them to
eat. So
go to. Then there are certainly is occasionally you'll get a sea lion that gets lost, and goes in the interior and you find it dead, but they only make it a few kilometers inland before they die.
Yeah, they've got nothing. They've got nothing.
And penguins freeze to death when they get, if they were to try to beeline it into the interior. Besides having no food, and they also die of thirst. That's the other problem, is that your ability to not die of thirst depends on your ability to melt ice, and as you get up into the plateau, that ice,
snow stops and it's just pure hard ice.
And it takes on the average temperature of the air. So in the summertime, when it's light out, the ice is colder than the air. In the wintertime, it's the other way around. So you might be sitting on ice that's like -50 at, let's say, near the pole station or something like that. And that ice, to take that ice and melt it, it takes more energy than it takes water at zero to bring it up to a boil. Right? There's so much energy just to take that ice, because you normally deal with ice out of your refrigerator where it's near zero.
Yeah.
Slightly.
This is below
really
zero. You gotta work it back up, and
so if you try to melt that kind of ice in your mouth, besides being quite uncomfortable, you would die of hypothermia before you have enough water that you don't die of thirst. So your big problem, and the problem with animals as well, is that they need a fuel source to melt the ice. And then once it's in liquid form, you work hard to keep it in liquid form, or reuse it for there, because the fuel is really but it's like being on the ocean. Right? You're surrounded by cubic kilometers. I mean, again, ice in the interior is multi-kilometers thick.
I mean, it's isn't it one of the largest deserts in the world?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because and no one really thinks about it as a desert, but there's no rainfall. There can't be rainfall because it's too cold, right? Like
Yeah.
it
So
couldn't form.
in places I've been at, some of the spots that I was at, they talk about their rainfall in millimeters a year in snowfall equivalent, right? And that's the big, and part of it is that the water from the ocean has to drive inland fast enough before it freezes out, right? So you find on the edges of the continent, they have a relatively higher snowfall, and on the interior, it's rare to get snowfall. But normally, the normal direction of wind is when you're in the interior, is coming down on top of you. That's
And then it pushes out to the coast. You're kind of like in the center of the whole thing.
Yeah. So a storm has to get really energetic, drive inland fast enough that it doesn't freeze and snow out, and so that's what the top interior gets millimeters of ice a year, as opposed to the edges.
I've seen that you've been there. How quiet is it, or is it like windy? When you're actually at the pole, when you are on the dead center south,
or when you're more than a couple hundred kilometers from the coastline, it's dead quiet. That's one of the things that the wind blows. You get the katabatic winds maybe a quarter of the time. So when the wind's not blowing, there's nothing to make a sound. That's one of the really precious things to be in the interior, not the coastline and zingy dingies looking at the icebergs and penguins, but on the actual interior.
And there wouldn't be any clouds at night, would there?
There are clouds, but the clouds are less likely, and the clouds might be high lenticular frozen crystals, so you get nice sparkly
stuff. When you look up, you can just, on average, you can see like the entire like night sky in its full detail.
Well, I mean, it depends upon when you're there. Like at the South Pole, and near the South Pole, there's only one sunrise a year and one sunset a year. So the sun rises on the first day of spring, southern spring, and stays up for 6 months, and then sets. Yeah. And when it sets, you get a 6 month night, right? You get it, and that's sort of the.
I mean, like I wasn't going to like say like, oh, you know where it never gets night. What's it like at night? Like it's
overnighting means you're there for 6 months plus. Is the kind of. But back to think about so if you're seeing stars, it's because you're there at night, the winter time, where you're there for the long haul. And again, those are temperatures where they really don't want to even fly planes at those temperatures. No. So when you land, particularly if you're landing after the height of the solstice, so you're in the fall landing there, one of the first things you do when you establish a spot in the interior is you build an igloo, because if there's some reason you have to winter over because you can't get out in time, that's the beginning of your ice cave, where you will then live in an ice cave underneath. Because at that point, the ice, while cold, is warmer than the air outside, the nighttime air outside. Yeah. So you gently just don't.
I've always wondered if, let's just say it's nighttime in the South Pole, and you step outside of your tent, completely strip off naked, and there's no heavy wind. It's like borderline non-existent. How long would you be able to survive, or you drop dead as an icicle?
It kind of depends, because your skin, if you're someone like me that has lots of hair on it, you'll get a natural insulating layer.
I'm good for that too.
and so beards, by the way, beards are really important. When I go to Antarctica, I grow a mega beard, right? I am unabashful big beard, because the beard hair is one of the great insulations. Insulators, right?
It's why all the old explorers of the North and South Pole always just have giant ass beards, because it's free insulation, right?
But so there are people that do it's a thing at Edmonton Scott, where they go into a sauna, and they after the doctor checks to make sure their heart ticker is not there, and they basically put on boots and do a run where they run out. You know, the sauna is next to one of the doors, and you run out the door around the pole, and you can do usually a ceremonial pole and back, right? And they do that dash back there, and you can survive it, right? It is like an ice water plunge, but you're running, but running makes it cold on the base that you're running in, but running also minimizes your time out there.
Yeah.
So again, imagine you can do a couple 100-meter dash. The thing you don't do is do it in your bare feet because you'll get frostbite. Right.
Right. Yeah. I've been homeless. So I know what it's like to keep your extremities less extremed. You know, like you gotta good thermal socks and a pair of gloves are kind of priorities.
So
But
people who can cardio take it and do the that they call it the 200 club or whatever the thing is of 200 Celsius difference between sauna and outside temperature stuff. It's a thing that some people do.
yeah, but that's kind of like I guarantee you they do that with a bunch of like medics nearby. Like I'm talking about if you just lost your mind and decided to get out of your tent. How long would you last, would you say? 5 minutes? 10? Less?
Like it depends on the wind. If you have wind, you're going to be in big trouble.
Oh no, like no wind. That's to say it's dead still.
And do you have something on your feet, or your feet is bare?
Let's just say you've just got the socks you flew over in. I don't know, you went snow mad or whatever what they'd call it back in the day, and you just like I won't be back for some time. You know, like you're just gonna walk out and not come back.
I mean, thinking about the problems, because you begin to run into hypothermia, you get behind in what's called the temperature curve. And eventually you then get to frostbite, which is not going to kill you, but begins to affect your extremities before the frostbite will get deep enough that you're going to start to have serious organ damage. It also depends upon how hungry you are, because the main way you stay warm is eating.
Oh yeah.
You do not stay warm by bundling up. Bundling up just changes your heat loss. In fact, to some extent, the people that are cold feel cold are because they have too much clothing on.
Oh, I remember hearing about that when you isn't it when you come out of like ice cold water, yeah, and you were fully clothed, you have to strip off immediately. The same sort of principle.
Because that water is a really efficient heat transfer mechanism. Right?
Yeah.
And so if you're sweating because you have too much stuff on, that sweat line turns to an ice line, and an amazing amount of heat gets lost through that thing, and you get cold quite fast. And sometimes, again, we're people that aren't paying attention. It's called the Minnesota syndrome. It's people who say, I'm tough, I know how to do cold, I blah blah blah, I'm from frozen country, blah blah blah. And they don't understand.
Right, they don't call it the Russian syndrome, considering that's
high altitude, low humidity. So your clothing, your layers of clothing are designed to try to stop wind from getting to your skin. They also have zippers you can open and close to regulate your temperature. That's one of the things.
Yes, I've seen that from footage on people in the South or the North Pole. Like they're kind of like they're always half zipped. You're like, what the hell are they half zipped? They're
because
you
want to be, and so with like the 7 layers you have on your upper body, and the 5 layers on your feet, and the 3 layers on your hands, you are working those layers to make sure you feel comfortable. So in fact, at that spot, I'm actually quite comfortable in Antarctica, right? But you have to pay attention to what you're doing, and you have to take the time to do it.
You're not just gonna stop and look up at the sky for like half an hour. Like it's probably not a good idea, right? Even if the wind isn't too bad.
Again, if you have some camera device you want to work, right?
Yeah.
and you have your outer layer looks like a giant mitt thing. So it's hard to work let's say a camera button. So you would want to remove maybe the outer layer and maybe the second layer to go to an inner layer. But before you do that, you say, okay, where am I going to put the hand when it starts to get cold? And so you might arrange for your suit such that you can put your hand underneath your armpit. That's one of the warmer
You
places.
have like a little pre-made pocket just to put in whenever you need it.
Or you have a hand warmer active in one of your pockets, and you check to be sure that's there before you then take off your glove. Work with something. When you start to get unbearably cold, you put your hand into your warm spot to warm it up. You don't sit there and say, because here again you talk about what happened. You get behind.
You never did say how long you'd be if you were just outside.
You can't warm it up because all of a sudden now your capillaries are closing down, and then you start running into frostbite. And frostbite's not going to kill you right away.
Well, it'll give you blood poisoning. I mean, you'll lose an extremity, and you'll probably like get blood poisoning that'll kill you that way. So,
but you would last for a fairly long time as your extremities get more and more frostbitten.
Sure, but what would go out first? Like, would you be completely frostbitten, or would you just turn into like a block of ice, but you'd already be dead like 5 minutes prior? Like in an hour, would you be dead? 3 hours?
No, I think you can survive for a while. Again, I'm assuming you're not just pure naked, right? If you're
I'm literally that. Let's just say you've just lost your mind and you just strip off naked. How long would you last out there? Even not on an extreme day, just on a bog standard average day. Well, actually, an average night. For some reason, I've got it in my mind that it's like a pure like light, just like the stars all down on you, and you just like lost your mind. You got out your tent, you're all alone, and you just strip off naked, and you just, I don't know, you stand there, not even any socks on. Like, how long would you last?
I think you'd probably, the thing that you would probably run into, as frostbite is setting in, is you lose your core temperature, right?
Yeah.
Your core temperature, your body function starts to shut down.
I mean, you're not even trying to you're not even jumping up and down to try to keep warm. You're just dying.
Yeah, you're getting but even there, you're getting your body temperature lowers down when you start to get sleepy. And so
yeah, I hear you don't go to when you're really cold. You don't go to sleep.
Because so I imagine basically after a couple of hours, your core temperature is getting so low it's hard to stay awake and you fall asleep.
So it wouldn't be minutes; it would be hours.
I'm guessing, but I'm not a expert on cold temperature stuff. It's something so far from what I would do there. Plus, the other thing is you never go someplace without somebody either being with you or somebody knowing where you're going.
Right.
That's another process. But
something a little bit before we move on, something a little bit closer to home. What was the did you ever have like a scare, like due to cold or due to the wind or due to being cut off from like the outside world, and like it looked kind of dodgy, like you might be in trouble when you were in the South Pole, or even mountain climbing, or one of those a volcano started to get really angry and you want to get out as quickly as possible? Anything like that ever happened to you?
Let's do it. Let's do one of the. I'll do a volcano thing, and I'll do another.
We don't have that much time. You gotta pick
so
one.
Volcano thing would be at when you were at Kilauea monitoring the Halemaumau lava lake, the small one at the time, and we watched the lava lake drop, and it does piss things, so it's dropping there, but this thing dropped to the point where it had dropped at least 300 plus meters by the time we said this thing is dropping really bad.
How fast did it drop?
And 300 meters took less than a half hour to drop, and by the time we were leaving, it was probably close to a kilometer down, and that's when you get the hell out, right?
Yeah, I was thinking, like, isn't that a sign of something really bad's about to happen?
Volcanoes do their most bad stuff by imploding, by falling in. And the collapse inside a volcano then releases gas that then does bad stuff. So that was a thing where we saw that the lake going, and we were already backing up because again the mode of the volcano changed. And in watching the cameras, because we had when it started to drop down only a couple 100 meters, that's not anyway, but we were backing up because the volcano mode was changing. And as we were watching the camera and watching this thing go out down on the site, we were like, okay, we're leaving the park, right? And we basically went by the main radar station saying we're getting out of Dodge, as they say. And in fact, I'm heading back to the airport and flying out of here because a volcanic collapse at Kilauea with normal volcanoes would result in a very devastating situation. Now it turned out the volcano did collapse.
Say, like, what was the end result like?
But it spent about 6 weeks falling in. So we went back a little bit later on, and we were getting almost clocking about every 20 hours we're getting around a magnitude 5 earthquake as a thing. And so there's a whole cubic kilometer of lava that had left the summit, went down the spine to the very far east section, and that came out in a spectacular lava flow where you've probably seen in 2018 with a bunch of homes, vacant homes got destroyed and so forth. But the summit was left with a cubic kilometer cavity that it slowly fell in. It was really odd. We didn't expect. We thought it basically go boom, kabam, but it basically did over several weeks. So it was actually a rather gentle collapse. But that was we didn't know when it sunk out of sight and it was rapidly draining.
No, I mean, like, you weren't going to take a risk of being like, oh, it might be fine, or it might be about to explode. Like you're not gonna become a tragic statistic, are you? Just because you don't want to get on a plane.
So when you approach a volcano, you have people monitoring. You have more than one escape route, and when the volcano changes, even that change is minor, you back off and say, wait. If it's in a rhythm, it's doing or it's flowing, that's fine.
I imagine like a volcano, particularly a really active volcano, really like puts you into perspective in the grander world, the grander galaxy, just how small you are. Because that must be like an ocean of just pure fire and like gas and like just hell, just right there in front of you, constantly churning at any given time. So I don't imagine people are going to look at it and go like, I'm fine. Look what I can do, and you start messing around next to it.
It is a thing where the thing, however, that is probably the hardest to convey is the sound, because I can show you pictures of roar, but it's hard to give you a mountain-sized subwoofer and have this infrasound that you can kind of feel inside you when the volcano really does a thing, right? It's I can't give you what it sounds like because I don't have a mountain-sized thingy doing that sort of stuff. The sound and sound vibration is quite extraordinary. The point that's uncomfortable is you're in a fully gas mask type of situation, and you have a hazmat and insulating suit in the middle of the tropics when it's already 35 degrees in sensible units and high humidity. So you're in a suit inside the thing, inside this bubble, sweating like a but that's because you need that sometimes the gases that come out are quite hazardous, and those are gases where you could die in a matter of seconds.
That's what got Pliny the Elder, isn't it? He kind of he got the noxious gases and dropped them. Red Eye in the chat is reminding me about the St. Helens thing. I asked him that the very first time he was on the stream. It's kind of like a very big thing. So yeah, of course I'd ask him about this. We now know each other enough I can talk about more nuanced stuff. The little details.
But so when a volcano changes mode, that's what I'd say. Whoa.
Yeah. Right? That gets you back enough, which is good because you don't know what's gonna happen after a certain point, right? Like there comes a point where you're like, I think it's time to go. I just think go. Like I don't.
So I've had situations where I've gotten the drop, right? And the drop is not you drop. It means whatever you're holding on to, you let go and you are going. But you don't even carry you the camera equipment, whatever it is. You just let go and you're rotating it back through the escape route to
I mean,
safety.
it's why you've got the escape route, right? Like it's there for a reason.
So I've had cases where I've gotten the drop call. Now it turned out that it wasn't a critical thing, but that's where somebody is on there saying drop, right? As opposed to someone saying, we should probably leave, right? That's the I've had
for some reason, I don't know. Did you ever get into like twisters or anything like that? Yeah, like did you ever go like storm chasing or whatever?
I mean, most of the tornadoes that I've encountered were in the state of Minnesota.
Oh,
with one exception.
Not really the state you think of, is it? Minnesota is the.
It's I guess part of it was I was there, Minnesota, Wisconsin type of thing because of places like Chippewa Falls and Minneapolis for the computer stuff. There was only one other time where I was in Missouri and it had to do with, so we had to do a shelter thing. The alarms went off and we had to do a shelter bit. And in the process of the shelter, there was somebody in a room that wouldn't come out. And there was this guard that was trying to convince the person, you need to come out. And the person inside was absolutely refusing to show in public. And it turned out this person was the world's smallest person and didn't like to be seen in public because he's pretty small.
Yeah.
So there's this business of the guard trying to come in and say, no, you're at a spot where you need to leave the hotel and go into a shelter. And we're not here to try to con you in so we can take pictures of you. Everyone's evacuating.
Oh no, the Cobes attitude. Like you're all making fun of me. Like right behind us is just slowly growing tornado getting closer and closer. That's people. Interesting enough, too bad Elf isn't still here. They're in Omaha, and they've never once seen a tornado. Tons of tornado warnings. Never once actually saw a tornado in Tornado Alley. But a little bit further down, you got Oklahoma City, where every few years they get absolutely annihilated. All right, let's move on. And on the topic of America, as you can probably read this, this is from Dubis Goobis, but more importantly, it's just really actually fun.
All things in history are black and white, a lot of it is grey, and that includes the Civil War. It was actually fighting for states' rights.
States' rights to do what?
Excuse me, sir?
States' rights to do what? What did you want to use those rights for? You usually don't mention that part. I want to hear it. I wonder what you want to do with them.
Well, the Confederacy didn't want to be oppressed by the North.
Really? What were they preventing you from doing? What did they not want you to do?
Listen, my friend, there was more to it than slavery for why we made the Confederacy.
That is really, really interesting because the guy who made the Confederacy, the vice president, said that it was because they wanted to have slavery, and all the state constitutions said they wanted to have slavery, and they seceded the moment that the president got elected that was going to abolish slavery. Boy, the Confederacy sure looks slavery adjacent, at least. No, anyways, states' rights do what?
You're ignoring our other concern.
Yeah, but among the concerns was slavery, so I don't care because you deserve it because you're evil. And slavery is evil. You should know this. By the way, could you answer my question, you fucking traitor? States' rights to do what?
Well, it's our heritage.
It lasted 5 years. The Annoying Orange has existed longer than the Confederacy did. The fucking Annoying Orange, dude. You're gonna celebrate a nation so fucking weak the Annoying Orange outlived it?
Well, states' rights.
Got Douglas.
Each Dixie boy must understand that he must mind his Uncle Sam.
I was in Dublin Airport, and I ran across this very nice man. He was a fusion artist between jazz and country music. And he had been on stage a few times with REM and a couple of other people, but he was a hardcore Southern, like, Confederacy supporter. And he's like, well, we don't see it as slavery, we see it as our heritage. But yeah, like heritage, like movie series last longer than the Confederacy did. The Nazis lasted longer than the Confederacy did. Like fucking Uggs. Like finding Uggs on shelves. It's like no, the Confederacy was not a good thing. There's no way of. It was also a colossal failure. Like it's not just that you like. It wasn't even just that it was like a bunch of traitors, and it was backed off slavery and oligarchy too. They don't want to outright state that because hell, to a degree, America's backed on an oligarchy. But the South was far more open about the fact it was an oligarchy. But like, there's nothing good about it except, I suppose,
Sure.
the mustaches and beards, I guess, that came out of their leaders. They had some pretty good mustaches, you have to admit.
I think that some of the, as somebody who had relatives in both the Union and the Confederacy, I do not honor the relatives who were traitors and were part of the Confederacy. I see the Confederate battle flag as anti-American, and I see the Confederacy as a symbol of the worst bit of treason. And if those people, so waving a Confederate flag and being, flag Yahoo blah blah blah, is to be it's a opposite, right? It is so there's nothing glorious about the Confederacy. There is nothing
no matter
glorious
how ways you
about
slice it,
people
it failed.
the traitors who fought in the Confederacy. It is a massive cluster F, and it is history. Right? So I don't agree with saying, oh, we've got to sort of wash the history and pretend it
No
didn't happen.
one should. Anyone who's ever said that is even if they're coming from good places, like, oh, we should never give them a chance to be proud of it. In the sense that you're gonna hide it. No. It should be told in its full. There's no need to lie about it either. It was such a, well, you said it yourself, clusterfuck, that there's no point to hide it. Just show how bad it is. But
I don't truck with the whole Confederate flag thing. No. I don't like the music shows where the Confederate flag is seen as a thing, because again, it's anti-American. And I'm pro-American. Right?
Ironically, you go just a little bit south of the capital, and you're gonna find the sign of traitors as far all the way down to Cuba. Like the Florida, like you'll see Cuba on really nice nights next to a flapping Stars and Bars out in the Florida Keys. And you know what? There's a good chance that the person who owns that flag is a black person, because this is how, like, heritage gets confused and fucked up. It's weird.
And so trying to cosplay the 1850 Civil War is one thing, but doing that sort of Confederacy type shtick is really a cover for saying, I am anti-American. I'm un-American.
I miss owning black people. That's what they all want to say deep down inside.
Even if you're not a slave trader, or descended from slave traders, it is again glorifying the worst treason that the U.S. encountered. So I am very happy, for example, is finishing up in the Biden administration, where they are removing stupid, treasonous Confederate generals' names from military bases. How stupid can you get to have places like in Bragg and so forth naming after Confederate treasonous generals as a military base of the U.S.? How dumb can you get? And again, I don't. So to the relatives that fought in the Confederacy,
Yeah, absolutely. You actually reminded me of I think it was Who Do You Think You Are? The guy from Arrested Development, the old Jewish guy who looks like Bernie Sanders. He found out that his great grandfather or whatever had a plantation, and when the Union troops came back, it included black troops who he used to formerly own, and one of them took a garden hoe and caved his skull in. And when he was told this, he's like, "What's that make you feel? Good." Like, yes. That I don't get to choose who my ancestors are. I get to choose how I respond to it. Like
So Howard not wash over the fact that after the Civil War, the carpetbaggers went in and basically
this is literally the birth of the nation, because that was the logic they had it, and it was true. They did. Yeah,
the whole northern carpetbagging thing was another atrocity, right? That was there.
Not really on the same pair, but definitely something pretty shitty. Like
and
established the whole Reconstruction was a disaster.
Yeah, of the set, and it was a really sort of bad situation that just was made worse, right? It's So some of the resentment you have in the former Confederate States from how Welsh they were abused economically after the war is also kind of similar to when folks decided at the end of World War I they wanted to be actively punish the losers. Creating a ripe situation for World War II.
Germany, Austria. Well, actually, Austria-Hungary had to end. Like, everyone outside of the Austrians wanted the empire to fall apart. But Germany got so much hate for, at times, stuff they didn't do. They did do something. Belgium wasn't exactly the happiest place in the world under their rule, but they did get, the Treaty of Versailles was completely lopsided, and it, as horrific as it must have felt at the time, it was just in reality fire for the extreme right, and the extreme right, well, led to the Weimar Republic being replaced by the Kahlmann-Führer. But
so let's also bring up the fact that the Union states had a number of slavery sympathizers, and slave trade, although it was not legal, was still quite.
Do you remember who replaced Lincoln?
Johnson.
Yeah, and what was he brought on as the vice president for a reason? Why was he brought on in particular as the vice president? He wasn't a slave. He was definitely not pro abolition.
But Lincoln believed in having a cabinet of people with contrasting views.
Yes, because to him, he never, in the back of his mind, imagined someone would unload a gun into the back of his skull and end his presidency before an election could replace him with somebody who could maybe push it further on down the line. Like he was what was it, the fruit cart sort of politics, the dust cart politics, where like you get on the back of a cart and just shout and scream, and he wasn't a great president because he didn't give a fuck, and he was okay with slave owners just being let go. Don't you be naughty now. I won't. Do you have any white robes I could borrow for a few seconds? I have an idea in the back of my mind. Boom.
Johnson was quite fond of inciting riotous actions in front of Congress, right? He would go there and does this sound familiar?
He was a Jacksonian, if I remember right, and he believed that populism could be used to get anything you want, and so does Trump. And we saw January 6th. Speaking of,
Yeah.
tomorrow I will be playing a January 6th video game here on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe. Shameless plug, actually, for Skeptical Jesus, because he's the one who made the game. But anyway, back to this. Yeah, like.
But so again, to be fair again, also please understand there's a very big difference between the Confederacy and Southern culture.
Yeah.
Southern culture is a very unique, important part of Americana.
It's not a monolith either. There's a lot of different types of
The
Southern
very
culture.
there is really quite an important part of what America is, right? So one of the things that I don't truck with is assume because you're anti-Confederacy, you don't like the South. And
no,
that's
you know
that's
as well as I do the Kingdom of Jones. You know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like those were a bunch of Southerners who were like, yeah, we're not rebelling. We're not doing it. We don't want to be a part of this Confederacy thing you're doing. And while we're at it, no, there's not going to be any more slaves. You know,
but that's something that happens is when you don't support the Confederacy, you don't honor the Confederates. People then say, "Well, that
you don't honor your homeland. You don't understand.
You're anti-Southern. You're no. Those are not the same." And again, I don't truck with the we've got to go and remove all vestiges of Confederacy. Just for example, don't fly Confederate flags on your state capitol. Don't honor Lee or those other traitors.
What's
certainly
the
don't
big mural that's considered the Mount Rushmore for the Confederates, where it's Lee and like Stonewall? It was made by the Daughters of the Confederacy. It needs to be blown up. It just needs to be blown up. Like that's it. Like someone needs to plant some explosives and blow it up. That's it. But what's it called? Like I forget the name.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I mean, but in South Africa, there is a museum to the Afrikaners. That's essentially the equivalent of essentially the white apartheid sort of thing. And to this day, it's what I saw was school children being bused there to tour the place, to see the murals and the monuments and to understand the history, not to pretend it didn't happen or to try to eradicate it, blow it up, but to see it for what it is. That's a healthy part of stuff. So seeing the Civil War for what it is, seeing the conflict for what it is, and not pretending like states' rights is an excuse to say, like, I thought this was a very good thing. This states' right bit.
And he's not even by far. He's not the first to say it. But the best one online is a guy called Anshun Films. He's a former reenactor tour guide. So he go around the battlefields dressed as the people. He's really young too. I can't imagine he's older than like say 30 now. But he's like so engrossed in historical like reenactment and such. He's got a show called Checkmate Lincolnites, where a Confederate officer and a Union officer, both played by himself, basically strawman each other, while rather the Confederate guy strawmans and the Union guy goes, that's actually historically incorrect, and then they bring up the quote and the link and the giant like text wall. The great thing with the Confederacy, much like Jared, I've noticed this. I can always make connections, give long enough time. Jared did not hide who he is, nor did the Confederacy. Like the guy said earlier on this video, the Confederacy was really open and truly proud of their fucked up worldview that white men were inherently better than black men, so they can use them as beasts of burden. They can use them as tools, as slaves. That's wrong in every way, shape, and form. no matter how many times you slice it. I love watching the college lectures from the history classes from like UCLA or Columbia. I'm currently redoing one on the early Middle Ages um, from Yale from like 5-6 years ago. It's great stuff. It's just one like segment of like a much longer course. I'm not claiming to have like college education or whatever on it. I'm an armchair historian, but it's so fascinating to like see these connections. And when I watched the one on the South during the Civil War, they had like even back before the Civil War, there were like 11 schools of thought, all justifying the same wrong answer, which is slavery is okay.
But let's also, in you're talking about, this is a thing that sometimes the Yankee Northern folks like to sort of get on their moral high horse and say, North good, South bad, right?
Well, they kind of, yeah, the same way the Allies good, Axis bad. There's a lot of nuance there, but
no, even for example, in the civil rights era, while some of the more notorious public displays of discrimination were found in southern states, the degree of racism and segregation in the northern states was as bad, if not worse, right? And so this notion of, but there was this distinctive in the civil rights era that Southern bad, Southern ignorant.
Well, they love to embrace the stereotype. That was one key thing.
But that's also a Yankee Northern thing of saying, if you're a Southern person, you're racist, you're hillbilly, you're a hick, you're not intelligent. And that's far from the truth.
What state are you from again, by the way?
Well, I was born in the state of California.
But would you say you're culturally Californian or?
Yeah, I spent most of my life living in California when it was
during
in the US.
During civil rights. It was predominantly like, especially like in the late tier, it was very liberal and left leaning, but there were strong conservative elements. Like, didn't Reagan become governor in there at one point?
That thing is that California is actually quite a mixed state, but
in the cities it's very blue and outside it's very red.
Civil rights era, being civil rights activism was kind of put into the same anti-American stuff because they said, well, civil rights people
were communists.
We're opposed to the war, and if you're opposed to the war, that must mean you're soft on communism.
That was Nixon, right? He was the one who really promoted that.
And others as well, but certainly Nixon played that card, right?
Was that your
Nixon's
childhood?
rise to Congress was in attacking somebody for being soft on communism, right? So I grew up born in 1960, grew up in the 60s. I was very much exposed to folk music like Pete Seeger, Joan Baez, Trio, things like that had Peter, Paul, and Mary on the sort of civil rights movement. Plus, going to a Baptist church, I knew sort of the Baptist songs, right? As a kid, I would love to sing some of those spirituals and some of those civil rights movement songs that I know quite well. In addition to that, in Oakland, I had exposure to people in the Black Panther movement. And
I was going to say, you might have heard like Jesse Jackson by any chance?
Oh, yeah, I've had interactions with him, but that's
I imagine that was much later in life, yeah.
That's a different story. But more think about when in Oakland, the junior high teacher that I had, her house was lived next to one of the buildings that was one of the Black Panther headquarters. Well, they moved around, and so
this is before they broke up into like a bunch of paranoid drug dealers.
Drugs.
That's a tragic story in and of itself, Christ.
So I as a kid, a young teenager, I had political discussions was somebody like named Huey Newton, if you know who that person was.
I do know the name. I wouldn't be able to tell you a goddamn thing about it.
It is sad, but his life ended up by him being killed at a drug deal went bad. But he was very patient with me, doubting my parents' Republican stuff, and he would, but he was willing to talk to me, spend time, and go and say, I want you to go back and read this part of the Constitution, come back and tell me what it says. Don't ask your parents. You tell me what it means, right? And he would send me back. keep very articulate person, but also people saw him as being very scary. And in fact, ironically, some of the things that the within National right, the NRA did was to try and minimize very black people having serious guns. Those were people you talk about carrying around. They were very well armed and had this notion of we'll take care of ourselves type of thing.
Yeah, I love the response of that the Black Panther movement had to like Americans screaming about this, because this was also when America started to seriously ask questions about like gun ownership, right? The 60s was the real first time, because everyone always knows the 60s is the time when like women made their last real hardcore movement to like make equality a thing, that the Hispanic movement started to pop up more and more, like more representation, more respect, that gay people made their first tentative cases, and of course overarching all of it was black like rights.
Yeah, that was the thing that they talked about being black.
Then there was through it all, like, hey, America's interest in guns is a little creepy. You know, like maybe we should try to address this too. Which that's a still issue you guys are dealing with today.
Was very safe. The crime was very, very low, and it was patrolled by Black Panther people with heavily armed guns. And the unsafe things occurred when the Oakland police would come in to try to do something. The Black Panther would say no, and that's when.
Well, sure, and I always guarantee you that like the cops came expecting the Black Panthers to open fire first. Like back in the day, back at their prime, like they had incredible discipline. Like, they put up with probably the worst shit in the world, and they had the means to solve it, and they didn't. Like the Black Panthers have been painted as these like white hating psychopaths, and there are elements today that might claim the title that might actually earn that. But back in the day,
I was as white as they came, having political debates with one of the leaders, and he was very happy to do that. Right, spend much more time than probably should, trying to talk to me about things. That being said, and they did a lot of feeding the poor, so forth. On the other hand, the organization, like many organizations, had a bunch of corruption going on inside, and it eventually decayed into nothing. But it was interesting when I saw the movie Black Panther. It was filmed, a lot of the locations filmed, saying, yeah, I remember that part of Oakland. Oh yeah, that was one of the headquarters of the Black Panther movement. They did very deliberately some places that were key in that movement. But the organization turned to tragedy and a whole bunch of things. There was some really bad shootouts, getting involved in some bad stuff that border on organized crime. And so I don't want to sit there.
I've seen a lot of people compare it to, like, for example, the anarchist movement, or I saw someone once online. This is somebody who is like 17 years old and has only ever played Hearts of Iron to know their politics. They compared the Black Panther movement to the Syndicalists. And I'm like, first of all, how the hell do you even know who the Syndicalists are? Second of all, no. Like, you can find a technocrat union in Dublin. No one will take the technocrats seriously. No one ever took the technocrats seriously. And I mean I don't mean like somebody who has like technocratic elements, because then you just go to China. You can see that. But I mean like an actual technocrat union office. There is one in Dublin. But I want to just ask something, like, I'm wondering because I always
If
ask
I just
somebody.
on that last comment,
Oh
I
yeah, no,
don't
go on.
mean to glorify the Black Panther movement. There's a lot of bad things that they did.
No, don't glorify their bad things. Praise their good things.
But again, like the whole business of North versus South, Union versus Confederate, it's not a good person, bad person, right? That's the thing that I think people lose sight of.
Oh, you're talking to a European. Like for the longest time, we had some very interesting viewpoints on the Germans. You know, like post World War II. Yeah, whether they be hardcore Stasi communist spies or whether they be Nazis. It didn't paint them in a great light. And then in the 80s happened. And now they're kind of like these rich banker dumb kids who just want to get laid all the time. And we're like, you know what? I can get behind that.
And you got to understand in history more than just a naive bit of stuff saying, oh, World War II about Nazis and victory of stuff. Let's remember that Franco, another supreme fascist, lived to ripe old age.
He wasn't a fascist. Hold on, I gotta push back. He was a good old-fashioned conservative. God, fatherland, all that stuff. That's very anti-fascist talk.
No, he was very much. I mean, if you look at, for example, he was a co-conspirator of the whole Axis power stuff.
Except Hitler never got him to do anything that he wanted.
But he, on the other hand, certainly allowed them to operate in that way, and
sure,
essentially
but he also let the English do whatever they wanted, and afterwards he worked with the
because he went and played this whole "I'm anti-communist" shtick.
Well, that's the thing. That's the core thing. Look at all the ones out in the Caribbean who are anti-communist.
And so he did the hyper nationalism, belligerent patriotism, and marriage of state and industry.
Yeah,
and
there's a word for that. It's called authoritarian conservatism. It's good old-fashioned. The state is all because God says our king is in charge. I happen to be the king right now. Whatever. So that's not fascism because Mussolini would have pissed on that idea. But here's the thing: both are equally wrong for different reasons, all leading to the same thing. I hate them both for different things, but
so
he wasn't a fascist.
Franco. I mean, I'll label that because my view.
Don't get me wrong. Like, it had Hitler invaded Britain or whatever.
My view
he
of fascism, it's not. I don't play fascism and Nazis, right? With a broader. I have a broader brush with the goals of fascism and test for it. That being said, one of the things that I think is the fact that he was allowed to live to ripe old age rather than be in prison for his war crime. And then that on top of that, on his deathbed, he reestablished a monarchy. So the King of Spain owed his reestablishment from Franco, and the son has the audacity to remain king, knowing how he came about. Right? That's the thing. I think it's a shame.
Also, don't forget this little nugget of information. He during the war was approached by not just Carlists who did join him and even considered revolting against him. That's a different branch of the that's actually, I think, the last remnant of the Bourbon monarchy. But the current king, they came to him, was like, hey, can we be the king? And he's like, oh, no, you can't be the king because we are creating a new Spain that will remain true to its old things, and if you are king, you'll just be a puppet. And what I find fascinating about all that is the second Franco died, his country fell apart overnight. But to this day, if you go and you look at the police logos of a lot of Spanish vehicles or their uniforms, they still have the fascisti in it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not shocked that you make the connection between them and fascists.
And again, my definition of fascism is broader than yours. But
Well, no,
even
no. I know a bit. I know there's a big difference between fascism and Nazism because Nazism is uniquely German, or Germanic, but
so
it's like
I think as well,
fascism
and
is
the
hell. It's hard to pin
one of the
down
other
what
tragedies of Spain is the whole
it was
problem
Franco, and I suppose it
of
was also the Civil War, but the Civil War could have been resolved, you know?
the whole problem of Catalonia, right? And the poor Catalans, right, for example, who did enormous damage to Napoleon, operating inside Napoleon's things, and
where we get the word guerrilla from, guerrilla warfare.
They were very instrumental in the downfall of Napoleon, twice. Having the intelligence stuff that they you would not have had the decisive battles that the British were able to pull off. It wasn't for the Catalan and the Brits promised Catalonia independence in return for their help in trying to overthrow Napoleon.
Well, that's Britain for
Around,
you. They'll lie
and
to
turned
their
around and
chief.
sold them down the river, right?
Yeah.
But they had also done a number on Ireland as well and so forth. So it's
Sir,
that.
I'll have you know, I am a hardcore Sharps Rifles fan, so I know a few things about the Peninsula War. Thank you. I actually had a very brief meeting with Cornwall. Thank you very much. And he was old and shook my hand, and then he went on to shake another 5 people's hands. No, I'm messing. Like I did meet him, but like the sad fact was, no one apparently knew who he was. I was one of 5 people who she shook his hands. There was like other authors there, and they were like hundreds of people to meet him. No one was meeting the creator of fucking Sharp. Like, come on. I'm a Warhammer fan. Gaunt's Ghosts wouldn't exist without the Sharp series. Like, it's just it made me feel sad, and it also made me feel understanding that I like niche stuff. Like this stuff, like I like plenty of stuff that's like mainstream. I'm really big fan of what they've done with Star Wars over the past few years. I like what they do with The Witcher and such. But yeah, back to the whole Franco.
But I think moving on to things, Catalonia has been basically stomped into the ground, and again, and another example of stuff, to be also fair, a lot of my relatives that came to the so-called New World in the 1600s, were Scots that basically got kicked out from there. So I have a lot of Scots
they weren't trying to establish New Caledonia there and the Mosquito Coast.
No, they were Scots that ran afoul of a monarchical change, and
they were Jacobins. Oh,
and so but the story goes that they were associated with people who, when the house changed, they got swept up into the whole
House Stewart. He's still technically around in Holland right now. Elizabeth apparently met him and everything. But
it's so they're fairly hard, and right now they're actually fairly hardcore. The Scottish nationalists. They were, some of my relatives were part of the first Scottish Parliament before it was dissolved, and it wasn't until a couple of years later where it was reestablished, and some of them are now members of Parliament there, at least for a while, until the SNP gets probably their arse handed to them in the next election.
Yeah, Sturgeon was not a great choice.
But she's out of it. But that power vacuum is causing problems. Nevertheless, they're
honestly that's the most current thing I know about the SNP. That, and there was some scary reports that I was seeing that they are getting a little bit too xenophobic, as in no any xenophobic is bad, The fact that they're like, oh no, when we take control, there'll be times where you will not be allowed to speak English. Go fuck yourself. That's not how Ireland's works.
I think we got to be a little careful because the unionist propaganda on Scottish.
Oh no, this was from like
and part of the thing is that one of them made that the English variant that's spoken in Scotland is a very dominant.
No. This one I gotta point out that like I think you're misunderstanding. If the Irish were told the moment the English left that you now have to speak Irish, we would never have an Irish language to this day because the Irish would be like, go fuck yourself. I'm gonna speak English.
And nowhere
just to
you cannot find in the S&P literature things saying that once Scotland.
No, I 100% agree there. What I'm saying
and you won't find any rational
particular person.
I would probably say that there are a bunch of unionists that put forward those kind of lies.
No. This was this one person. I'm not saying this is a policy. I am saying that this person let their mask slip a bit, and the SMB could do better with kicking them to the fucking curb, because they're showing that every group has extremists, and that's okay because people are gonna people, especially if you've got more than two people, you've already got 5 opinions. So
anyways, these relatives are fairly they're an odd combination of both anti-Westminster and anti-monarchist, right? But they have to keep their mouths shut because the monarchy is actually quite well favored in Scotland.
You mean among rich people? Like, there's something that people often forget, and that's class. Poor people in Scotland don't give a fuck about the royals. The wealthy do.
As I said, that the monarchy is quite well favored in Scotland. I didn't claim it was with majority. I didn't claim it was concept. It was quite well favored.
Oh, no. Same with Wales, same with Northern Ireland, same in the UK
independence
too.
Movement tries to keep the anti-monarchists silent because they don't want to equate Scottish independence with abolishing the monarchy. Those are two separate questions. And in fact, I suspect if it went to a vote in Scotland, they would not be able to say we want to abolish the monarchy. I believe a majority of Scots would still, even King Begears, being there, they probably would still
he was yelled at when he was there a few days ago.
Oh yeah, but that's Scottish. That's the Scots, right? That's then it's one of those things where if the Scots aren't being busy politically wise complaining about the English, they'll complain about themselves. So
I mean, like, Northern Ireland is just another Scottish enclave, and they kind of do that a lot.
But I sadly I think the situation for Scottish independence. This is back to Catalonia, right? That Scotland, an independence movement, wants to talk about leaving the former United Kingdom and establish itself as a separate nation, and then ask for admission into the EU, and also working with the Scandinavian group as part of the claim. But the problem is, in order to get into the EU, become an EU member, requires unanimous support. And Spain made it very clear to Scotland.
Yeah, because of Catalonia.
You've got to stop the Catalonia stuff. And it used to be that the SNP and the Scottish Independence Movement was very sympathetic to the Catalonia movement. They had a similar sort of purpose, right, going forward. But the Scotland said, well, okay, we're willing to sell out Catalonia, and so yet again, poor Catalan people get on the river, because basically now Scotland officially is like, we don't support independence of Catalonia. Why? Because we need to suck up to Spain in order to be able to get into the EU. Should we be able to allow it to break up the Union Jack? But that's a hard sell because of tradition in there is so ingrained. It's a really hard sell.
There's a
Where
lot
there's
of nuances. Like, do you remember when before Brexit they had the referendum, and the majority of Scotland decided to stay. But here's one thing that Scottish independent people still don't have an answer for, and it was what happened really early on when the vote was being tallied. The Orkneys and the Faroes and the Shetlands all came in to stay, and all the separate people on the panel for at the time looked at each other and was like, well, Scotland has to remain whole. And they're like, but they want to stay. What are you going to do if they want to stay and you want to leave? They'll let you leave. Will you let them stay? And there was a long pause. They didn't compute this. And that's the problem I have with Scottish independence right now. There is no plan. The same reason the North, there are two arguments beyond Remain, and that is independence. That's mostly coming from the super conservative Ian Paisley party. Is it the UMP? I think the super Protestant one. And
are you talking about Northern Ireland, or are you talking
yeah,
about
I
Scotland?
literally pointed up north. Like, it's only a few miles from my door. Like,
So you're talking about Northern Ireland. We're not talking about Scotland, because I didn't.
No, but I mean, technically, I am talking about the United Kingdom, so it's but it's a good comparison. Northern Ireland has two arguments right now, and one is the independence one. That's very small, but it is sadly growing, and the other is to reunite. But there's no plan to reunite. Imagine if tomorrow Britain just left, like Belfast. What would Ireland do? There would be starvation. People would die. And I don't mean like there'd be violence in the street. That would happen. But I mean like there wouldn't be a means to transfer over. And Brexit, believe it or not, for a lot of people here in Ireland, was a good gauge to see what happens when a big union breaks up. How does it work? And as it turns out, really awkwardly, aggressively awkwardly, there is no joy in it, because there's 1,000 different things. What's taxed with what? Are you still using the money? If not, what's your money going to be based off? What about citizens from A country and B country, movement, shipping, whatever it is. We only recently found out that since they left the EU, the UK doesn't have to protect our airspace at all, whatsoever. We only found that out last month, and we don't have an air force because of the UK's air force can protect us. And their response back is, it's not our job, which technically it's not. It's very scary, and it's very cool too, because there's a lot of ifs and maybes, and some of those maybes are really awesome. But
I mean,
it seems no one's going in the directions that are awesome. It's all just sort of
the whole Brexit problem, was a big, colossal fiasco, and that did nicely. And pre-Brexit, you could pretend that there really wasn't a border between the Republic of Ireland and the.
Pretend be damned. I only ever once in my entire life ever had to deal with a border crossing, and that was during the Troubles, when there were literal terrorists moving across the borders. Since then, I could cross whenever the hell I wanted.
And so that situation now, with Northern Ireland being kind of not in the EU and kind of sort of, economic
No,
zone?
it's not in the EU. It's in the UK, but it is so adjacent, and it would starve
Like I
without
said,
an EU member.
it is in this economic zone thing.
I know, but I
where
mean, like, legally.
friction is well, that's the process now that's happening. And one of the big problems with the EU is they got to deal with the problem of potentially, maybe customs run through Northern Ireland getting into the EU.
Oh, mate, I'm just going to tell you up front. I've asked around, and anyone who was old enough to work in the 70s laughs and just tells me they'll be smuggling. There was smuggling when I was a kid, and there's smuggling now. And they're not wrong. There's been a lot more trucks. That road right there outside my window is one of the major arteries up north. It goes up into County Cavan, which is great because there's not that much in the way of border patrol. When that happens, every morning trucks move up, back, up, down. They've only gotten regular since Brexit. Who knows what they have there? That could be everything from migrant workers to goddamn like fentanyl. There could be explosives to thousands of bootleg DVDs. I don't know. Whatever it is up in there is like it's making money, so much so that the trucks are always around about 5 o'clock, which is, for the record, in about 15 minutes. So I want to wrap up now before you start hearing the illegal trucks moving back and forth.
Yeah. But anyway, so this up there, again, I hope sometime in my lifetime I see a Scotland independent of Westminster. I think that would be beneficial to Scotland.
That'd be pretty cool.
There would certainly be issues regarding the border, but as the Scots said, if we had border custom crossing at Hadrian's Wall, we'd celebrate it rather than shoot at them. So.
I'm also for Wales figuring out if they want to stay or go, because Welsh are very confused about that themselves.
Yeah, and then Wales is another thing of even harder at anything, because the English did a pretty good job of trying to.
You're talking to somebody who spent the first 2 years of his life in Cornwall. I can tell you about one worse in Wales, and that's the Cornish. All right, my lord, you want a bit of Dorset going on there. But it's but beyond the apple carts is an entire civilization that's just, it's gone. There is a revival movement, but frankly, there's nowhere else to put it. It's a hobby for people who are bored.
Let Westminster be the place that the English do stuff to the English, right? And not to other folks.
Well, who's English? Because Northern English people will have some arguments to be made about that. I don't see any of them having brass bands, do you? And they all break out into this giant version of like the Full Monty song, but with brass band. Like, it's... that opens up a can of worms. English.
The Labour Party being typically against the independence movement, because Labour Party would often used to count on Scotland giving them a block of Labour seats to combat.
Well, that's how, ironically enough, Tony Blair got into position, and they gave them new Labour. I've read his biography. He was like, "How did I get Scotland?"
It's a mess, and I have no doubt that independent Scotland would do what Scots do, which is behave to themselves worse than the English could. Right? I'm sure that Scotland would do to itself.
They'll have a civil war in 10 years.
I mean, not a civil war, but they'll. I mean, I
can see a civil war.
I can make no pretenses that Scotland, but here's the thing, right? If Scotland were managing Scotland, then Scotland's problems would be Scots' problems.
That's what Gandhi said about India, and it's true, but it comes with so much weight that the Scots better have a fucking game plan before I'm gonna sign off on it. Not that
But I
they
think-
require my help, but like I'm sure they'd appreciate some rando slightly next to them going, "Yeah, I like this new Scotland." You know.
But I think you are probably seeing 2 to 3 election cycles before the independence movement could push forward a referendum, right?
Wait, 2 to 3? I actually have that a bit of a pessimistic. Like British, ever since Brexit, British politics has been so ramshackle that all they need is a figurehead, a really like powerful leader to show up and go like, "We're fucking done. We're out. We're going. Referendum time."
Here's the thing is that in Hollywood and so forth, the labor, the pending labor landslide going across is going to shift the SNP out of power, and labor is not a friend of the independence movement by any means, either both at the Hollywood level or at Westminster.
They elect the union because they think the union is best for everyone, but too bad it's never the best for everyone. It's always the best for English, Labour or Conservative. It doesn't make a difference.
Some might say that Labour is just a Tory with a different set of grift.
Well, say that to Lloyd George. You know,
But
that was the last real Labour.
On the other hand, I suspect that if I were in England, I would probably be either voting Labour or Lib Dem.
I was gonna say you're not gonna vote Green, are you? Because I appreciate the effort, but you just might as well just say vote on fire.
The Green Party, like so-called libertarianism, is a worthless piece of insert bad words, because the Greens have no intention of governing, and if you get them in a coalition, their job is to screw up whatever you're going to do, right? So look at what's happening with the Greens in Australia, where Labour has a majority, but the Greens hold a key vote in the Australian Senate and are objecting to stuff. So Labour, the hypocrite of the Labour the hypocrisy of the Green Party is that they put on themselves the environmentalists, but then turn around and vote against environmental programs because the only thing they know how to do is be in opposition. And they have no idea about governing, no idea of actually governing there. So they're a worthless party that I would, in a preference vote in Australia, it'd be hard to tell the difference between One Nation and Green. They'd be the bottom of my preference list in that sense, because again, Greens are not environmental. They do not hold a coalition. Their job is to basically be a petulant child to complain and block any progress because it's never good enough.
Green was always just the fifth party. They were just there. They were there to round up a hand. Like they weren't important for the longest time. But what I'm wondering, if you were to impose, let's say you take the Lib Dems at the height of their power, which would have been like what, the mid-90s, and you tossed them into American politics, what would have happened?
They would have probably been pushing some more social programs from that, because the American politics spectrum.
Oh yeah, the stuff they would have taken for granted wouldn't have existed in the American system, or doesn't exist in the American system.
Yeah. But you see the same thing you go across to Canada, and you talk about stuff to your typical Canadian, even on the spectrum, and they just have very different assumptions than you do. But my calculus back, I'd say about the problem with Scottish independence is that the assumption is the next election cycle, both at the Scotland High Road and then the Westminster system, is going to see a Labour impacting significantly across them.
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone's sick of the fucking Conservatives right now.
And the other problem is SNP has been in power about as long as the Tories, right? And what you're seeing is voters basically getting tired of those people being in power and not delivering, right? So
Now,
SNP
they'll argue that they've been railroaded by Westminster, but in actual fact, I do think a good chunk of it is that the SNP is a fractious party. It hasn't really solidified what it wants other than a free Scotland. But
yeah,
what
because
does
it
that
knows what it
Scotland look like?
opposes. It knows what it opposes, but the government itself is
It's a standard like a communist coalition guerrilla movement. You know, like it's in the woods. That they're all against the evil corporate government that's backed by America. What do you fight for? I'd fight for this communism. Actually, I don't. Uh-oh. You're like, what do you do? What do you need? Just get out and fighting among yourselves. So,
so part of my caucus again is saying is that okay, you're gonna have a labor tidal wave at the national and the United Kingdom former as it is level, right? And that's going to make it difficult for Scotland to try to push a referendum for independence. And then probably that dominant, you'll probably have a very sizable majority, and that the next election cycle, that majority will be reduced because Labour will still be active, and it probably will. You probably won't get to the stage where the independence movement in Scotland can gain the upper hand vote-wise until the third election cycle. So that's why I think it's 3 election cycles out at a minimum. But that also gives the SNP its chance to get its act together.
Yeah, it needs a Bible basically. Like this is what we want, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is okay if we do it A, B, C, and D, and that'll piss off some people. You know what? It'll even create a spin-off anti-SNP party. Like no matter what they do, it will create a counter. You know the types, and you know what? They'll probably be filled with it'll be probably filled with. Let's be honest here, fucking assholes and skinheads. Like it'll be filled with people who are like Scotland belongs to the Scots, but they'll say it in like an obscure, brand new version of the Scottish dialect they just made up, which is what the Northern Ireland people did with the DUP. That's the party I was thinking of earlier. The DUP.
Oh yeah, because those were the troglodytes that Theresa May had to climb in bed with. When
Ian Paisley's party, aka no.
She ran a snap election thinking she would increase her majority in order to manage.
Cameron did it before her. Don't forget that. Like he's the one who made the coalition party with them.
And so there, those folks really screwed up the whole process of trying to get some sensible even votes on stuff. So, and watching stuff where, 1 vote, 2 votes lost to try to force Parliament to send the major back to
I think they had 14 seats, and they basically made the coalition just to say fuck you to the Labour. Like at this point, it has nothing to do with what's best for England. It's what's best for your party.
They're full of young Earth creationist wacko stuff that Theresa May had to climb in bed.
I remember back to actually Tony Blair's biography, and I listened to an audiobook where he narrated it. He said he was in an elevator with Ian Paisley, and as he was going up to talk to Jerry Adams and Ian, they were going to work down. This was like the basis of the Good Friday Agreement. For the record, Clinton had very little to do with the damn thing. He showed up and he's like, "Hey, how about you stop fucking around?"
It was more. The more was if the American that had some involvement was Senator Mitchell.
Yeah, there was far overall, like Americans didn't play like the biggest parts of all, but they were the impetus because America basically showed up and tapped Britain on the shoulder.
And Senator Mitchell, as an independent person, U.S. Senator, did a lot of negotiation between stuff because he was seen as a neutral party because he knew how to keep his mouth shut and not offend.
But back to Blair. Blair got into an elevator with Ian Paisley, and he heard that this is the first time he actually met him face to face. And as they were going up to the big boardroom, Jerry Adams was already there. Um, he heard that Ian Paisley was always going to say negative things to no matter what you said. No matter what you said, it would always be a bad thing. So Tony said, if I remember right, it's something like, "Good weather, isn't it?" I suppose you'd see it like that. Or we've been making real progress, haven't we? Because a few days prior, their aides had agreed on something, and he's like, "No, I'll know when we have progress." And it's back and forth, back and forth. He's like, "Okay, you know what? He in his mind, he's like, could you just take over the UK to shut this fucker up? Like, no one likes the DUP in the UK. The DUP are dicks. There is no American equivalent except for, I suppose, those extremophiles out in Oregon or preparing for the bombs to drop. There's nothing.
It is, on the other hand, the Sinn Féin abstentionist policy. They need to get over that, right?
Well, that again is back to Jerry Adams being
just suck it up to say allegiance to King Big Ears and get into Westminster. And
they don't need to. The last chance they ever had to do that was Thatcher, and they overrid it. Look how shite the UK is right now. What the hell can Britain do outside of an invasion? They couldn't blockade us. They wouldn't be able to afford it or agree on a position to how to blockade us.
But again, it's one of those sad things where the Tories will get a shellacking because the Murdoch press has even realized that the Tories have run out of stuff to do, and it's time to chuck the Tories. Begin to roll the press.
The press doesn't care about the UK anymore. They care about the US ever since Daddy Trump got in office.
So the Murdoch press will allow the Tories to fall, and as soon as that happens, they'll start blaming all the evils on Brush, because they see the Murdoch sees a reset as being a relative sort of for the Tories to clean house, because the Tories have some wackos of the highest order. I mean, come on. The fact that they went from they selected Boris Johnson and then turned around and did Liz Truss.
Every time I have you on, I always remind you, I don't just remember Boris Johnson. I remember Boris Johnson's dad. You remember Boris Johnson's dad,
yes.
Don't you?
Yes.
He was all the things we joke about Boris Johnson turned to 11. That man at one point controlled, it wasn't the treasury, was it? What was Boris Johnson's job? It was Dad's job. It was the assistant to the exchequer or something like that. It was a really important job, and this guy could barely string two words together. It's like if you gave Jared from Murdoch a key to a nuclear
Johnson only appointed people that were sympathetic to his ego, right?
I'm talking about his dad. Obviously, when Boris got into office, but that's not even that shocking. Every egotist does that, even outside of politics. I know YouTubers, I know streamers who surround themselves with yes men. That's just
Westminster credit. So this is just, I'm not entirely bad on Westminster, because they certainly addressed Boris Johnson head on, or now can officially, without breaching of parliamentary etiquette, call Boris Johnson a liar. And it will be a long day before Boris Johnson gets back into that position. if the Republican Party were so bold as to address Trump, but
they asked for his
they're
phone
cowards.
like 2 days ago, and he said that he couldn't find the password for his old phone, so he can't help them. Like, they're asking for his old phone that will have proof that he was there, and
Well, part of that is that those are probably our messages that Sunak would rather not have show up regarding some moratorium.
but like what, a quarter at best of his staff will be found. Oh, that's your current head of transportation doing shots of this hooker's arse while wearing a T-shirt that says "fuck COVID."
Yeah, and this is the kind of stuff. I mean, we're speculating, but this is the kind of stuff that Tories would rather bury, and so they're also not pushing hard of Johnson. Johnson, probably on the other hand, is privately threatening him, saying, "If you don't lay off, I'm going to spill the beans." Right?
Well, you should. He can only do it the one time, right?
Yeah, but he's also got to do it in his ego style, right? He can't be seen as doing the right thing. That would be
no. I mean, no, you misunderstand. Call his bluff. Just be like, yeah, do it right now in front of everyone. And because he's seeing it as a weapon, so he has to use it as a weapon. And once he's used it, people.
The body is round. Holy Christ! You two are still streaming.
$10, by the way.
Thank you.
Holy Christ, are you two still streaming? I am actually about to wrap it up here. It is 5 o'clock in the morning on my end.
We're rounding around on the end of the stuff, but that's sort of thing.
We're kind of circling the drain at this point.
Is the business
when you
of
bring English politics up, it's usually circling the drain.
Now the question becomes: when will the Tories call the election? Are they going to call it in this late summer, early fall? Or are they going to try to do it next spring? Or are they going to try to edge it out all the way to the bitter end?
Election anytime soon. The only thing I could think of them calling an election sooner is they think they have some sort of power move, which I do hope will backfire in their face. Look what happened to the guy who came after Blair, big fat lips. He was Brown. Gordon Brown.
Gordon Brown. Yeah, Gordon Brown.
Do you remember how bad that went for him? Like, Christ, that was a disaster, and everyone knew he wanted to be the next PM. He even became like the head of the exchequer, the head of the treasury, solely because of that. And it was.
And even though I'm sympathetic to a lot of the Labour Party, I am also concerned that if Labour gets in with a huge majority, that they'll become a problem, right? I think having a majority causes something, but not being belligerent is a thing. But again, as soon as Labour gets in there, the Murdoch press are going to be blaming every bit of problems from the Magna Carta to future destruction of the Earth's atmosphere a billion years from now when the sun.
They're going to be bringing up the price of cheese. Do you remember that when Brexit hit? Like,
yes.
A big shock to all of you, like the price of cheese, or no, the EU regulation on refrigerators. Remember that was a big thing in the UK for a few years.
Oh yeah. So we'll see what happens. You know, the big thing now
These
is
people control a quarter of the earth. By the way, I want to make this abundantly clear. These people were a master of more people than have, at one point, have ever known any other master. Like, it's terrifying.
But I'll say again, the British Empire is long. The sun set on the British Empire long ago. I think
I remember Hong Kong. He drove around his car park 3 times, screaming, "He'll be back."
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that the pretense of a United Kingdom and Union Jack is in the same class of British Empire
Yeah,
moving the
yeah.
waves. And
As the sun
it's only a
rises,
matter
the
of,
sun
and
now
again,
sets.
so my thing is let the Scots run Scotland, let the Welsh run Wales, let the English do what the English will do anyway.
What about Cornwall and what about Northern England? Eh?
That's a detail for the English to deal with.
Oh, is it just like the Welsh and the Scottish? Oh, you see. Oh, what about the Isle of Man? What about the Isle of Wight? Ooh.
Yeah,
What about yeah?
It's a problem, but yeah.
It's a complicated dance that.
However, just to say, I am not pretending that that the U.S. is perfect. We have got our Trump, we've got our belligerency, we've got our dysfunction.
Assumed it at this point, man. Like you're grand. You don't.
So,
You actually say that a lot. You don't need to worry about it. We can assume. Big shock that America. I know. This is a hard thing for people to hear. It's not. Oh, how could you? In front of our children too.
yes.
It's fine. America is fucked up as shit. Britain is fucked. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna say it. I don't even know what. Let's just pick a country. Micronesia. I don't know a damn thing about Micronesia's history. It's fucked up as shit. There are nuances that could be better. 1,000 examples of corruption, and a million ways it could be better. But you know what? I'm sure if you asked a Micronesian what's it like to live in Micronesia, they would talk about, oh, well, I like the beach. Seeing that I live in 90% beach.
It's a wonderful place to visit. Wonderful people, great places there. However, in my opinion, the Australian government at the national and state level is the most corrupt first world nation by far. And it's just it's part of Australia. I don't know how they fix that.
You never lived in Ireland in the 90s, then I suppose. We actually had a tea ad with Bertie Ahern being played by a character who was totally not Bertie Ahern, having a little song about how great it was having a cup of Lion's tea. It's lovely having if I remember right, this is how the song went. This is on TV while he was in office. It's lovely having a mug in hand. It's almost as nice as 10 grand. And then under the table, a brown envelope is being handed to him. Like, because that's what it turned out to be. He was never done. In fact, he ran twice. They're one of the best-selling books of my generation in Ireland was our former leader, our former Taoiseach, talking about how corrupt he was. I don't think the book's name is like Corruption or whatever, but it's something like Bertie, a life. But all of it is like, yeah, so I went to Dubai, and then these lads just sort of like, can we build this thing here? And they gave me a bunch of money. I'm like, yes.
But I really hope the U.S. gets through this next election cycle in reasonably intact. I certainly hope that people are.
All right. Before I go,
I hope.
All right. Before I go, primaries in the Republicans. Who Trump or DeSantis?
Are you asking who? I think
who do you think is going to be picked out of the two of them?
My guess right now is Trump has such a lock on the Republican Party that it'd be very difficult, even if he's incarcerated, for them to not pick him. I think.
Do you think if he was mowed down in the street, they'd still have his body up as president?
Yeah, I think the Republican Party is so bereft of any honor and any integrity that it'd be very difficult. Now, it is possible, right? It is possible, but if you ask me what would be odds, odds would favor Trump becoming the Republican nominee. Now, you'd have to have something to undo that, and I believe right now we do not understand the depth of horror that Trump has descended to, right? The stuff he's being charged with and investigated on
He
is
didn't descend to shit.
child.
He just is. Like, that's the thing. Like, that, I think the rest of the world is starting to figure out that he himself has, like, just always been who he is. He will play any card he wants, and now that he's like, oh, people are dumb enough to do whatever the hell I want, kill them. Kill them, slaves. Slaves. I want you to kill them. Like, that's
so
your
I think
president, is
Trump,
it?
Trump, I'll say this, Trump has a very plausible chance of being nominated by the Republican Party, and that the more trouble Trump gets into trouble, the more the Republican Party will pretend to go behind him because they are actually bereft
I'm not
sense of decency. And I will point out that once Trump gets cast aside, you'll have a whole bunch of Republicans.
Whoa, there's a giant leap of logic there. Cast aside by who? He is going to be president. He has an army of slaves at his back. Who will cast him aside?
Let's say, it could happen through a number of means. It could become president because of the second term, he won't get to be president again. He'll leave. It could be that he has a medical condition that makes him
well, he's old and he's out of shape, so that's definitely true. He could just die.
Could be that the depth of horror that he's doing right now that we don't know about gets revealed. It could be that there are Republicans who want to be in the spotlight, are tired of him getting it all, are going to react. And we do see some signs of this happening. We see at state level.
DeSantis is actually an early form of this. After all, he wouldn't be there without Trump.
Or someone like Chris Christie, who I think doesn't expect to get the nomination, but is there to basically call Trump.
He has to be there, because who else would take his spot?
And the media wants a spectacle, right? They want to sell advertising on a debate stage with Trump.
Ignore the money side of it for a few seconds. I know that's hard in American politics, like Christ. But seriously, America needs to focus on this election. What did they say? Like 20%, 30% of Americans vote on average in an election. Oh no. If anything less than 70% doesn't vote in this election, I think you'll deserve what you get.
It's why
it's creepy. You might have a fascist.
I do not enjoy in our national anthem having to sing "Land of the Free and Home of the Brave" because I do not believe that's true.
It's wrong that you have to have your children sing it in your school. That's just wrong.
But it's that the U.S. is not free, and we are not brave. We are cowards. And you look at just, for example, the notion of how much Trump instills fear in Republicans. So because the balance of power is so tight that the DUP like idiots, the MAGA people.
MAGA, those are great comparisons. DUP, right? MAGA, yeah,
and they matter, and that's part of the problem. But we're seeing we're seeing the cracks happen because in the Republican Party, because state parties are finding it difficult to raise funds. Senators that spend, a typical senator will spend about 5 hours a day fundraising, right, for the next election.
Yeah.
That's on average, right? They're finding it hard. Republicans are finding it hard to raise money because Trump is out there grifting away and sucking all the money out. Right?
Oh, it gets better. Like there are tons of I believe the UN government poll, like a survey around America, and Republicans are increasingly, shockingly, elderly Republicans are getting sick of the woke narrative. They want to know about their medical rights. They want to know about their like, when is the minimum wage going to be increased? which I love how
Yeah.
a Republican is asking for a minimum wage. Oh,
Yeah.
baby, honey,
But,
it's
you
cool.
know,
I can help you. I can save you. Like, just come
But-
to me.
but Murdoch, pushing an American narrative, is doing the same thing with the Tories, saying Tories go after cultural issues. Go after
Exactly. Yeah, a few choice billionaires here and there. And it's not even, the weird thing is, it's not even all billionaires. Like, like, don't get me wrong, billionaires will always promote what's best for them financially. But it
But-
seems only a few choice ones ever go like hardcore fundamentalist, like fascist. Um, uh, uh, Murdoch was a great example there, but so is Elon. Zuck isn't. He doesn't seem to give a fuck about anything. Like, he just seems to be like, "Hi, friends. I am a normal person, just like you. I have an idea. How about I take all your information and make it mine?" And then you've got like Bezos, who's like, who are you gonna turn to? He's the old school guy with the giant like top hats and the huge like cigar in his mouth.
He's a Dale Carnegie or
Or
Ed Sanders.
Hearst. He's
Yeah.
Hearst. Like, he is literally laughing over a globe in like a top hat and cane, because who else are you gonna turn to? It's Amazon. But with
At some point, the Republican Party people are going to say it's my turn at the national stage,
and then they'll pick somebody, and then maybe there can be dialogue for the first time in decades.
because I think it's a situation that the one Republican who is most likely, but not certain, but most likely to be defeated by Biden is Trump. Not a definite, but most likely, if you've got a Republican who's going to lose to Biden, it'll be Trump.
Yeah.
And the question will become, if that happens, will that be the point where they'll finally kick him to the curb? Or will somewhere along the line...
Oh, well, he doesn't have another 4 to 8 years. Neither does Biden, so he better have a good bit younger vice president. But
but again, we won't know.
And I know
what
before
happens.
saying Kamala, I don't want to see President Kamala because she's beat. This is a suit. There's nothing there. Like, no one likes Kamala.
I happen to know her because she was district attorney in the city there.
She was a tool that hurt a lot of black people with her policies.
So I happen to know her. I'm not a she's evil person, right?
No, she's a person. But you know what? I'll take a person over a fucking monster any day of the week.
Yeah. But on the other hand, she does performs important roles in the Senate in casting tie-breaking votes. Given the situation, the question is, in 2024, will the Republican Party still be a aiding and abetting an insurrectionist narcissist like Trump? Or will they finally say to Trump, get the hell out of here, like Westminster allegedly did with Boris Johnson?
Don't say allegedly. Like, he'll be back in 5 years unless he is very smart and does the best thing for him in the whole damn world and take all his money and go to the Middle East. Hell, convert to Islam if he wants. Either way, he's set for the rest of his life. He can drink and drug and do whatever the hell he wants.
I could see if Trump is getting, it has to be potentially to receive jail time.
I was talking about
he might
Boris.
By
the way.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Oh, Boris. Well. Can you imagine he put a son of a Russian
I actually,
agent
in my mind, I'm literally picturing him in like the robes and the giant.
It just, I mean, it is just his honors list putting a son of a Russian agent and likely a Russian agent into the House of Lords.
Oh, for
But
God's
I
sake, I've shagged a goddamn heir to a throne, okay? I don't talk about it much, alright? But all I'm gonna say is, at a certain point, it's all just fucking titles. You do not flex the fact that at some point you had control over an entire goddamn town. You didn't use it, because you didn't have that much of a reality of much of a flex. But imagine you being replaced by somebody with a really stupid idea of how like civil servants operate.
Yeah,
They would have ended badly.
Yes, I certainly hope, by the way, that when Labor gets into power, they follow up on their pledge and abolish the House of Lords. Right? That's the way you handle all those articles. Basically, say, okay, if you want to go there and put on your silly wigs and hats, you do so, but you have zero political purpose. You're just a show trial.
I'm down for more tangents, but unfortunately, I've actually
all
got
right.
to.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, like I gotta leave. Like, actually, no. That's a tangent. Bye. I love you all. Bye.
Ciao.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
And I mean that, like, also check in tomorrow because I'll have updated the edits, and Landon has quite a few people he deserves to who he thinks.
For the